And coronavirus fears certainly not subsiding as we start the week today, Roger. The death toll rising from 2 to more than 80 in just a week.
And perhaps the most concerning thing of all, the suggestion now that if you do have the virus, it may not show any symptoms for 2 weeks. Now, the issue then is, of course, people travelling, the extent to which anyone can be tested. I mean, it really opens up a whole new area and suggests that at the moment the Chinese government, they're trying very hard. They don't seem to have a handle on it yet.
Yeah, I mean, the latest is that they have started stopping tour groups leaving the country. They had clamped down on domestic tour groups moving to other parts of China, but now it's also about that sort of external movement, and that then brings into question whether there's going to be any kind of impact on consumption globally, and that's what investors, the market, is trying to quantify at the moment. What actually could be the impact on consumption and on global growth, on China's economy? As you say, we've got a little bit more clarity on the incubation period, but still so many unknowns.
Well, as you say, the impact on all these various sectors, and very interestingly, of course, the oil price taking a bit of a dive, but suggestion from the Saudis that there hasn't been an real impact as yet in terms of demand, but I think that's the implication of where that may be going.
Yeah, and it's interesting, there is a column on the Bloomberg today about the oil price saying that it's interesting how it's reacted so much on demand fears around the coronavirus, perhaps even more than we've seen the sort of upside moves when there've been supply shock risk because of geopolitics. It sort of begs the question whether the ceiling is clearer than the floor for oil at the moment. And of course, we're talking about an oversupplied market. These demand fears are certainly not going to help. But it's not just oil. I mean, the commodity spectrum has been hit in general, from industrial metals to the downside to gold on the upside, of course.
Yes, indeed. And the suggestion around on the terminal this morning, I've seen the suggestion, is this the question mark, I suppose, rather than the suggestion, could this be the black swan event that people have feared in terms of taking the power out of the stock rally that we've seen so far?
Yeah, I mean, you do want to ask yourself how short-lived this reaction could be, and whether, even though we're seeing stocks selling off, people are just going to start looking for an entry point in stocks globally, maybe even in emerging markets, which last week sort of put an end to 7 weeks of gains across emerging market assets, stocks, bonds and currencies. Let's take a look at the markets then. 3 minutes into the equity market open here in Europe. We actually saw green on the screen in Europe on Friday, so it was a green light among a lot of red in global stocks, and that largely was probably driven by the PMI data we got out of Europe. But Europe down now, as futures were indicating, the stock 600 down 1.25 percentage points. Taking a look across regional equity benchmarks, the FTSE 100 is down 1.5%. The CAC 40 down by about the same. The IBEX trending lower by 1.2%, and the FTSE MIB also lower, though not quite as much as other benchmarks, down almost 0.8%. Waiting for an opening movement on the DAX. In terms of US futures, so the S&P 500 had its biggest drop since October, its worst day since October on Friday, and it looks like we could continue the declines. Dow and S&P futures down almost 1%. NASDAQ futures down 1.2%, ahead of a big earnings week, in particular for tech heavyweights, Apple, Microsoft and Facebook. So focus might shift to earnings later in the week, but for now, all assets really being swept up in this risk-off sentiment, not least treasuries. The 10-year treasury yield at its lowest since October. We're below a 165 handle, down almost 4 basis points. Remember, last week Citigroup was saying we could get to a 150 handle, but we're seeing yields drop across the treasury curve. 2's curve is flattening. JP Morgan is saying now's the time to short 30-year treasuries. The 10-year bund yield is steady at negative 34. The 10-year gilt yield slides 2 basis points to a 54 handle. But the biggest move is in Italy, a more than 16 basis point drop in the 10-year BTP yield. We're on a 106 handle at the moment. As we saw, Italy's Matteo Salvini suffering a stinging loss in that key regional vote. That gave a boost to Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte's fragile government, for investors making a snap general election less likely. And we are really seeing money pile into BTPs today. Taking a look across FX, so the yuan at its weakest this year, that's something to focus on that could reverberate across emerging markets as the week goes on. And in terms of what we're looking at in G10, the yen, the best performer today as money moves to the safe haven assets. We've already talked about oil. But WTI and Brent both sliding more than 2%. WTI at 52.92, Brent at 59.37, and gold higher by 0.4%, $1,577 an ounce.
Okay, well, let's have a look at what the stocks are to watch this morning. I'm joined in the studio by Bloomberg's Joe Easton. Now, Joe, it's interesting this morning. In fact, there are a lot of things quite well away from the issue of the virus that are affecting markets, because RBS, we had some corporate news, possible job cuts.
That's right. So RBS is said to be cutting around 3,700 jobs from their NatWest unit, according to the Sunday Times at the weekend. They have around a staff force of around 60,000 workers. So it is a significant number of workers workers. They are trying to reduce their costs. They had a recent increase in their capital ratio at the latest earnings report, which was a key negative. So it looks like the new chief executive, Alison Rose, is trying to make up for that with these cost cutting. Could potentially save the bank around £120 million, according to latest estimates. But it is really a continuation of what we've seen from RBS, where they're trying to scale back some of their exposure to the core of the UK credit and consumer market. Nonetheless, although it might be a positive for the stock, obviously unfortunate for the staff there, but it is a positive for the shares. But that stock's still declining around 1.5%. I think mainly the drivers today are those negative points that Naira went through in her wrap there. So that's kind of outweighing this news for RBS.
But meanwhile, in the pharma area, Novo Nordisk, their obesity drug's been rejected by the NHS Advisory Board.
That's right. So this is interesting. The UK Advisory Board saying that this drug is perhaps better than a placebo. It's a diabetes drug. Novo is the biggest producer of diabetes drugs in the world. The UK government rejecting it, though, saying it's too expensive at around $255 a month. That's too much for the NHS to pay, according to their advisory board. So they've rejected this deal. It is one of Novo's biggest, most promising drugs. Analysts expect this drug to bring in around $9 billion in sales by 2022, which is really one of their high-profile blockbuster drugs. But it's definitely a setback for the company today. That stock dropping around 2.5%, so a bit of a bigger move than the broader market for European shares.
And also the loan guarantor company, Amigo Holdings, they're looking for a sale.
That's right. So the main shareholder is saying that they're looking to get out of their stake in Amigo. So Amigo was is a rival to Wonga, which was the other big payday loan company. Both of them have had a lot of regulatory scrutiny with very high interest rates charged to consumers. That stock's been really, really poor over the last few years. It traded at around 300 pence a share when it IPO'd just 2 years ago. It's now trading at 56 pence. Stock dropping as much as 20% today. That stock really declines. So that's Amigo Holdings, share falling on the investors looking to get out of their stake.
All right, Joe, thanks very much. Joe Easton there joining us in our London studio with Stocks to Watch.
Let's get back to our top story then. And the death toll from China's coronavirus has risen to at least 80. That's as the nation has extended its Lunar New Year holiday by 3 days to combat the outbreak. And it's continuing to spread. Over 2,700 cases have been reported in China, as well as in at least 15 other countries and territories. President Xi Jinping is pushing local officials to strengthen prevention and containment.
And as fears deepen about the rising impact of the coronavirus, Saudi Arabia says it's closely monitoring the impact on oil markets. According to Saudi's energy minister, OPEC Plus has the ability to respond, but so far he says there's only been a very limited impact on demand. WTI sliding at the moment as much as 3.8%.
Turning to trade, and the US is focused on getting a trade deal with the UK this year. That's according to Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. Last week, the Chancellor Sajid Javid said any deal with the EU would take precedence over an accord with the US. But speaking at a Chatham House event on Saturday in London, Mnuchin said a lot can be done at the same time.
There'll be certain issues that perhaps they need to resolve with the EU before they finalize our agreement, but I think a lot of the issues can be dealt with simultaneously, and again, we look forward to continuing a great trade relationship.
That was US Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin.
And the two nations also clashed this week over a UK plan to impose a digital services tax on internet giants in April, and the imminent decision on whether to allow the Chinese firm Huawei a role in Britain's new wireless broadband networks. According to a Financial Times report, the UK is expected to approve a restricted role for Huawei in its 5G network, while considering a cap on the Chinese company's market share in the country. Final decision on all this is due on Tuesday.
And the US is gearing up for its busiest week of earnings. 40% of the companies in the S&P 500 will report on the final quarter of 2019, and big tech will dominate. Bloomberg's Danielle Culbertson has more from San Francisco.
When Apple reports on Tuesday, we'll find out how popular iPhones, AirPods and other devices were over the holiday period. We'll also get a better read on the company's shift to services and how the Apple streaming service is taking on rivals like Netflix, Disney Plus and Amazon Prime Video. Then Wednesday, Microsoft and Facebook released results. For the social network, some analysts say Instagram will continue to be the main driver for ad revenue. Tesla's also out with numbers Wednesday. The electric electric car maker will have to convince investors that the stock's record high since mid-December are no fluke. And then on Thursday, it's Amazon's turn. We'll find out how the company's promise of one-day delivery affected its bottom line. In San Francisco, I'm Danielle Culbertson, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Now, for the latest in global news, here's Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans. Leanne, good morning.
Roger, good morning. Let's start in Italy, where Matteo Salvini has suffered a stinging defeat in a key regional vote. It provides a much-needed boost to Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte's fragile government. Salvini had hoped that winning in northern Emilia-Romagna region would deal a fatal blow to Conte, forcing early national elections that Salvini would be likely to win. Basketball icon Kobe Bryant, who won 5 NBA championships with the LA Lakers, has died in a helicopter crash. The star was among 9 people killed in the incident in Calabasas, California, including his 13-year-old daughter Gianna. He spoke of her proudly on an American talk show.
Fans will come up to me and she'll be standing next to me and they'll be like, "Hey, you gotta have a boy. You and V gotta have a boy, man. You have somebody carry on the tradition, the legacy." She's like, "Oh, I got this."
Bryant leaves a legacy that spanned 20 years in professional sport and a growing second career as an investor. Now to the impeachment trial. Donald Trump's lawyers say House Democrats have failed to prove their case for impeaching the president. The U.S. leader's legal team spoke for about 2 hours on Saturday in what they called a preview of their broader defense. They will resume later today. White House counsel Pat Cipollone said Democrats are attempting to perpetrate the most massive interference in an election in American history.
They're asking you to remove President Trump from the ballot in an election that's occurring in approximately 9 months. They're asking you to tear up all of the ballots across this country on your own initiative.
And elsewhere, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he'll make history with President Trump. He's visiting Washington this week as the U.S. leader is due to present his Middle East peace plan. Also visiting the White House is Netanyahu's main rival, former military chief Benny Gantz. Israel is set to hold its third election in less than a year in March. Global News 24 hours a day on air and on
Too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
In the world of financial advice, speed, clarity, and foresight aren't just nice to have, they're required to survive. Adipar provides advisors the real-time portfolio reporting and insights required to realize the goals and personal potential for their clients. Trusted by thousands of wealth advisors, from family offices, RIAs, and large financial institutions, Adipar helps you make better, more informed investment decisions. To learn more, visit us at addepar.com.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Briggs.
Transforming the retail industry, that's what Poshmark aims to do as a social commerce platform. Launched in 2011, the company has a mission to build the world's most connected shopping experience. For more, I'm joined by Poshmark co-founder Tracy Sun. How do you differentiate yourself from competitors?
What we're really focused on is we take social and we take commerce. We blend it together in a way that's really unique that hasn't been done before. So what we really focus on is using technology to help people connect to one another in the Poshmark community. And often it's through their love of fashion and now home, but it can also be about what's going on in their lives. It's a true, authentic connection.
Do you ever plan to expand and do the reverse and go into retail stores, or do you like to be just online?
Well, you know, it's really interesting to see what's going on in the physical world today. So many things are changing in retail. It's been really fun to watch. You see D2C brands that were born online that all of a sudden are opening up stores, and then we have physical retailers who own the physical space, really building robust omnichannel strategies. So for Poshmark, because we're such a unique player in the space, for us, physical is going to look different because we think connection is so important to commerce. We spend the energy hosting these meetups where people can connect with one another, and then they bring those relationships online into Poshmark.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters in London, I'm Sandra Kilhoff. Time for a Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Now over to the First Word breaking news desk in Berlin. For today's morning call, here's Richard Jones.
Good morning, Sandra. It's been a broadly risk-off session in Asia, with many of the region's equity markets shut for the Lunar New Year holiday. The Nikkei 225 closed sharply lower, trading down by 2%, with the FTSE China A50 index down 5.7%. The E-mini S&P and E-mini Nasdaq futures are both also trading sharply lower, with both now down by over 1%. European equities are also unsurprisingly opening on the back foot, with the Euro Stoxx 50, the DAX, the CAC 40 and FTSE 100 all trading lower by 1.5% to 1.75%. Turning to the bond markets, the U.S. 10-year yield is lower by 4 basis points at 1.65%, while the 10-year German bond yield is 1 basis point lower at minus 0.35%. In the FX space, the Bloomberg Dollar Index is higher by 0.1%. The yen and Swiss franc are leading G10 gainers on a flight to safety, with the Australian and New Zealand dollars the laggards today. Looking at the European event risk calendar, the highlight today is the German IFO index for January, while we also get site deposits in Switzerland and UK house loan data for December. That's it from me. For more macro breaking news, it's SQUA Go on a Bloomberg terminal. Sandra?
Thanks, Richard. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here is Roger Hearing.
With the latest world news, Sandra, Israel is allowing its citizens limited travel to Saudi Arabia for Islamic pilgrimages or business trips. Up to now, Israelis have been prohibited from visiting the kingdom. The announcement comes ahead of the rollout of the US Middle East peace plan. It'll still be difficult for Israelis to travel to Saudi, as no airlines fly directly between the two countries. Turkey's President Erdogan has blasted an agreement to halt fighting in Libya as he squabbled with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel over the viability of the accord. During a visit to Istanbul on Friday, the two leaders bickered in front of reporters over the stability of the agreement. The doubts were confirmed over the weekend, with the UN saying that proxy powers in the conflict had continued to deliver weapons to Libya. And 18-year-old Billie Eilish has won the top 4 prizes at Grammy Awards, becoming the first artist to do so in 39 years. Her win comes during a ceremony overshadowed by the sudden death of the basketball star Kobe Bryant. The Grammys audience has declined over the years, but the awards can still deliver a sales bump to winning artists. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Roger Hearing. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Roger, let's continue with our top story. And China has extended the Lunar New Year holiday to help stem the spread of the coronavirus that continues to trigger new infections around the globe. The number of people killed by the illness has now risen to at least 80. For more, let's go live to Beijing, where Bloomberg's executive editor for Greater China, John Yu, is standing by. John, thank you so much for joining us. Give us an update on how Chinese authorities are responding today in their efforts to contain the virus.
So the latest today is that Premier Li Keqiang has traveled to the city of Wuhan. That's, of course, the epicenter of this outbreak. He's visiting hospitals. He's talking to doctors and nurses on the front line. He's trying to convey a sense of confidence and reassurance. The Chinese are trying as hard as they can to get medical supplies into Wuhan, which have been running in short supply. And that's, of course, after the extension of the New Year holiday, which you talked about, and also the fact that they've basically locked down about a dozen cities in Hubei province, which Wuhan is the capital of, to try and get a control of this flow of people traveling during the holiday. So it's a massive effort at the moment.
But John, I suppose the problem really is trying to build public confidence that they actually can keep this under control. There's been some concern, and I think even some anger out there amongst people who are restricted in their movement. Do you get a sense of what the public feeling is now?
I think there's been a lot of discourse, especially on social media, that maybe criticizing the government for not having done enough in the early days of this outbreak. The government's trying to turn that around by doing a lot right now. So we're having many press briefings every day. There's lots of information being sent out. Of course, Premier Li is in Wuhan. They've also been doing lots to try and reassure people that any new information will be put out as soon as possible, but that any infections will be taken care of rapidly.
And give us a sense of the scale of the spread of the virus around the globe, John. I mean, it's not only Chinese authorities that are taking action. Hong Kong officials have announced that the city is going to bar residents of Hubei province from entering Hong Kong. The ban would also apply to anyone who travelled to Hubei in the past 14 days, but there'd be an exception for Hong Kong residents. So the globe is waiting and watching. Talk to us about the extent of the spread.
Of course, the vast number of infections have been in China. I think the number is somewhere in the 97-98% range. I think of the 29 cases that have been found outside of China, 26 are people who have been to Wuhan province, or Wuhan, the city of Wuhan recently. I think there has been one case that I know of in Vietnam where a person had no record of traveling to Wuhan, but who had family members who had. And so there have been cases of the secondary infection, but so far relatively rare. So outside of China, the main thing has been to try and make sure to identify any travelers coming into the country or already in country who may have the infection.
John, you're in Beijing. Give us a sense of what it feels like there. I mean, are people taking precautions in Beijing? Is the government clamping down in the nation's capital as well?
You can definitely feel it if you go outside. It's very quiet. Even though it's a holiday period and there are less people in Beijing to start with, there's almost nobody out on the street. If you do go out on the street, everybody is wearing a face mask to try and protect from infection. So it's sort of all-encompassing at the moment. I think there's a lot of nerves sort of on edge, but nothing yet to spark any real manifestation of panic or real concern yet.
Yeah, I mean, the two things for me that markets seem to have to grapple with right now, John, is the effectiveness of containment, which we've discussed to some extent, but then also the impact on consumption. How much of an impact could there be on consumption, given that now China has banned tour groups from leaving the country?
The leisure industry, travel, hotels, restaurants are going to be hit pretty hard by this, I would expect. You mentioned the ban on outbound group tours. Also, we've had a clampdown on upwards of 50 million people in Hubei province and cities there. Obviously, the concern about infection is going to leave a lot of people not wanting to go out to see a movie, to go shopping, etc. The extension of the holiday actually will have an effect as well, because factories will be closed a little bit longer. And if that is extended even further, we could see ripple effects in industrial production.
All right, John, thanks very much. That was Bloomberg's executive editor for Greater China, John Liu, giving us the latest on the virus from Beijing. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Big tech could help investors turn their focus away from worry about the spread of the coronavirus. We'll hear this week how Apple's holiday season went. Facebook and Samsung will report earnings as well. And we'll hear as well from Starbucks and McDonald's, which Technomic says will post its fifth straight year of shrinking stores in the U.S. Technomic counted a loss of 100, although Chick-fil-A and Popeyes grew. ExxonMobil and Chevron will open their books as well, but the coronavirus has been hitting the oil markets hard. Crude oil prices posted their worst weekly loss last week since July on fears the virus will weaken demand and lead to oversupply. The virus has already closed businesses in China. Disneyland Shanghai Resort closed over the weekend, and Starbucks, McDonald's, and H&M have temporarily shut some locations. Investors will keep a close watch on it this week after Friday saw the S&P's biggest drop since October. I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
GEP, AI-powered cloud-native digital transformation. Hundreds of Fortune 500 and Global 2000 companies work with GEP to transform their procurement and supply chain operations. Why? GEP's unified digital platforms, smart, intuitive software that business users love, drive up adoption, user satisfaction, and productivity. GEP helps CIOs drive real digital transformation and achieve amazing results. GEP, helping the world's best companies do better.
Why has J.D. Power ranked?
Take the helm and ignite your spirit of adventure with a Sunsail holiday. Relax on a skippered yacht from sunny St. Lucia to the nutmeg-scented shores of Grenada. Or take charge with a bareboat charter along Dubrovnik's glittering coastline. With up to 20% off selected destinations, now is the time to book your Sunsail adventure. Sunsail. See the world differently.
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it. Add a boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run. Mix it. Mix it.
Along the goal line, Martin scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, hit a shot, they score!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB Digital Radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
8:30 a.m. in London, 9:30 if you're listening in Paris, Frankfurt or Brussels. Good morning, everyone. I'm Naira Chehich.
And I'm Roger Hearing, and you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
30 minutes into the equity market open here in Europe. We're seeing stocks fall from records. There was green on the screen on Friday following the PMI data out of the Eurozone, but we're down 1.2% on the Stock 600 right now as risk-off grips the markets cross-asset on concerns around the spread of the coronavirus. FTSE 100 down 1.4%, the CAC 40 down almost 1.5%. 1.5%. The DAX lower by 1.4%, and the IBEX are taking a 0.9% hit. The FTSE MIB trading flat, though. Looking through to US equity futures, we saw the S&P 500 have its biggest drop since October on Friday, and the declines could continue. Dow futures and S&P futures down at least 0.8%, and Nasdaq futures down more than 1% as we look ahead to one of the busiest earnings weeks for US equities, with tech heavyweights Facebook, Apple and Microsoft reporting this week. In risk-off, take a look at the 10-year Treasury yield, down 3 basis points on a 165 handle, hitting its lowest since October, and yields are dropping across the US curve. We're also seeing flattening on the 2s, 10s. JP Morgan says it's time to short 30-year Treasuries. The 30 is sitting on a 210 handle right now. In Europe, the 10-year Bund yield is steady at negative 34. The 10-year gilt yield slips 2 basis points to a 54 handle, but the outsized move is in Italy, where the BTP yield is down more than 17 basis points to a 105 handle, as investors are starting to price out the risk of a snap election. And perhaps that's also why we're seeing Greece's 10-year yield drop 10 basis points as the periphery is coming into favour today. In FX markets, the yuan at the weakest this year. That could reverberate across emerging markets, which took a bit of a hit last week across all assets after 7 weeks of gains. The yen is bid on the safe haven bid. Oil is down on demand concerns. WTI and Brent both down about 2%. WTI at $53.04 a barrel. Brent at $59.48. Other commodities markets, including copper, industrial metals in general, taking a hit, and gold is bid up 0.3%.
Well, let's go on to some of today's top stories. Now, China's extended the Lunar New Year holiday to February the 2nd to try to limit the spread of the virus that originated in Wuhan. Bloomberg's Brian Curtis has more from Hong Kong.
The most shocking revelation so far, Wuhan Mayor Zhou Xianwang said 5 million people left the city before the lockdown on travel. That spooked markets. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang is visiting Wuhan today to assess conditions. Hong Kong has moved to bar all entry of travelers from Hubei province, where Wuhan is based. And the government here raised the response to emergency, shut down Disneyland and Ocean Park, and canceled the marathon. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And as I was saying in the data check, oil is taking a hit. This after 3 weeks of declines on fear that the virus will hurt demand. Saudi Arabia says it's monitoring the situation, but it believes the crisis will have a, quote, very limited impact on consumption.
The Prime Minister Boris Johnson's expected to let Huawei take a role in developing the UK's 5G networks. That could put his friendship with President Trump to the test. The president wants to ban the Chinese firm over concerns it could make the network vulnerable to spying.
And Royal Bank of Scotland is planning to eliminate thousands of jobs at its NatWest unit. That's according to the Sunday Times. It's part of cost-cutting measures overseen by newly appointed CEO Alison Rose. The newspaper says one idea being discussed could see 3,700 retail banking jobs cut. According to the Times, an RBS spokesperson said the bank didn't recognise the figures.
And as Nera said, BTPs are rallying this morning after Italy's Matteo Salvini suffered a stinging defeat in a key regional vote. It provides a much-needed boost to the Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte's fragile government and makes a snap general election less likely. Well, for more, let's go live to Emilia-Romagna, where Bloomberg's Maria Taddeo joins us from Bologna, the region's capital city. So, Maria, where does this leave the ruling coalition?
Hello, good morning. Let me just actually move because Matteo Salvini is about to give a press conference here. It's good news for the coalition. As you know, this is a government that was not voted through. It was put together in a way that was surprising for a lot of people to see the PD and the Cinque Stelle get together last summer, precisely because Salvini pulled the plug on the government. So you could argue it's good news for the government in Rome, and it is bad news for Salvini. This is the second time in less than a year that he tries to get a snap election, and it just didn't really happen. And this was really a vote that was a regional election, but Salvini very much framed it as a referendum on the government, as a vote of confidence on the confident administration, or Conte administration, I should say. And he was not able to flip Emilia-Romagna, which continued to stay a stronghold for the left. So overall, good news for the coalition, not so much for Salvini.
Yeah, and that good news certainly being reflected in the market moves today. The 10-year BTP yield right now down 18 basis points to a 105 handle. Are there any negative implications at all for markets from this, Maria, or should everybody just be piling into BTPs and perhaps even the rest of the periphery?
Well, at this point, you could argue the scenario that we're seeing, and it's essentially what we just heard from Conte reacting to the results, is that you are going to see a coalition that is still weak, and the balance of power has really shifted in favor of the PD, moved away from the five-star, but the two of them actually have a very strong incentive to stay together. And Conte today said, we have a mandate for 3 more years. So for investors, what you're going to have is a weak government, but a government nonetheless that is working together, and the threat of a Salvini government and everything that could possibly entail, question marks about the euro, the European Union, a fiscal fight with Brussels has really moved away. So it is good news for investors on 2 fronts. You have a government that has a clear incentive to stay together for 3 more years, no snap election, and then also an administration that is purely or frankly more pro-European than any Salvini government could be.
And also, of course, Maria, I mean, we shouldn't perhaps rule Salvini out entirely, because there was a separate election down in Calabria which went his way, perhaps less of a surprise, but he's still quite a strong force in Italian politics.
Yeah, you have his, when you look at the polls, he is still, or the league, I should say, still the number 1 option for many Italians. It's always a mistake to say that he's out of the picture, because clearly he's not been out of the picture. But if you look at the election in Calabria, it was always obvious that it would go the center right. It was really Emilia Romagna that was seen as more of a battleground, and really just significant enough to trigger a snap election. It is a mistake to say that Salvini is not popular. You see it every time you go out on the streets. He's very good at dealing with people. But if you look at the strategic vision that he has, the reality is that he's taken 2 major gambles in a year, and both of them have actually failed. So he is popular, but he's not good, or is not really that good at really having a plan and being able to execute the plan.
Bloomberg's Maria Tadeo joining us from Bologna in Emilia-Romagna. Maria, I can very much recommend tortellini in brodo if you have a chance to get some food in between your live hits. Maria Tadeo, thank you so much. For the latest in global news now, here's Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans. Hi, Leanne.
Good morning, Naira. Let's start in the U.S., where Senate Republicans are facing increased pressure to call witnesses in President Trump's impeachment trial. That's after a report in the New York Times says Trump wanted a continued freeze on Ukrainian aid back in August. It cites former National Security Advisor John Bolton, who was fired by the president in September. Basketball icon Kobe Bryant, who won 5 NBA championships with the LA Lakers, has died in a helicopter crash. The star was among 9 people killed in the incident in Calabasas, California, including his 13-year-old daughter Gianna. Bryant leaves a legacy that spanned 20 years in professional sports and a growing second career as an investor. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver said in a statement that the league was devastated by the news. Turkey's Erdogan has blasted an agreement to halt fighting in Libya as he clashed with Chancellor Angela Merkel over the viability of the accord. Bloomberg's Patrick Donahue has all those details.
During a visit to Istanbul on Friday, the 2 leaders bickered in front of reporters over the stability of the agreement, particularly over whether all combatants in the country's civil war had committed to a ceasefire. The doubts were confirmed over the weekend, with the United Nations saying that proxy powers in the conflict had continued to deliver weapons to Libya. In Berlin, Patrick Donahue, Bloomberg Daybreak, Europe.
And the U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin is downplaying his remarks that environmental activist Greta Thunberg should go and study economics. He said he had not meant it seriously. He made the comment at a Chatham House event in London.
Some of you may have noticed I made a comment at a press conference in Davos, which was intended to be said somewhat in jest, okay? And I commented in the press conference this was a joke.
That was U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin speaking on his recent Twitter spat with Greta Thunberg. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. And we're 40 minutes into the equity market open, Roger. We continue to keep an eye on European stocks falling. This after we saw green on the screen following some positive PMI data on Friday, but right now down 1.25% 1/4 percentage point. We've seen the biggest drop for European equities since early December, and of course falling from close to records. If we take a look at industry groups, you're seeing commodity producers, travel and leisure, and tech stocks most hard hit, but every industry group in the red.
Indeed, and we'll be taking up that with Berenberg's senior economist, Callum Pickering, who'll be joining us in the London studio, and we'll explore with him the impact of this virus in market terms, but also what it means going forward in terms of perhaps damaging that rally in stocks. We'll see what happens. This is Deborah here. This is...
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesman to the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Investors who put their money on the line to help build U.S. infrastructure deserve to be protected. That's what we do at BAM. Our unconditional guarantee means investors receive every payment of interest and principal when due, period. BAM insured bonds have a high AA stable rating from S&P, and BAM credit profiles provide complete transparency on each and every transaction. BAM insured bonds help build America's essential public projects. BAM, the feeling is mutual.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Asset managers.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Mix it up, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
I think I just be myself, let it come naturally. I never try to, go outside the box.
Super Bowl 54, the biggest game of the year, is live on TuneIn Premium. Be there when the Kansas City Chiefs, dreaming of their first championship in 50 years, collide with the San Francisco 49ers' quest to bring a 6th Lombardi trophy to the Bay Area. Wherever you are when the ball kicks off Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, listen to every electric moment of Super Bowl 54 with the NFL on TuneIn Premium. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, taking the long view on prison.
In 100 years, we're not going to be locking human beings in cages, because we'll understand then, as we understand about slavery now, that it was immoral, that it just didn't work.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters in London, I'm Sandra Kilhoff with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Now, European stocks are very much in the red as deepening fears about the impact of the coronavirus grip the markets. China extending the Lunar New Year holiday to February the 2nd in order to try and tackle the spread of the virus. And so the risk-off mood has sent the stock 600 down 1 4/10%. Similarly so for the DAX as well. But the FTSE and the CAC 40 sliding 1.5%. US futures also pointing lower. Now, the flight into safety has pushed the 10-year Treasury yield down about 4 basis points to 1.64%. 10-year Bund yields ticking lower, down a basis point to negative 34. 10-year gilt yields sliding 2 basis points to 54 basis points. I'm also keeping a very close eye on Italian bonds. Its 10-year yield falling 17 basis points to 1.06% after right-wing populist Matteo Salvini lost a key regional election yesterday. Now, the yen has risen 0.2% against the greenback. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index is also bid. The offshore yuan down 0.6% to 6.974, erasing all gains from the Phase 1 trade deal. Here in Europe, sterling is holding at 1.30. The euro standing pat at 1.10. Finally, oil dropping more than 2%. WTI currently below $53 a barrel. Gold, meanwhile, bid up 0.4% at $1,578 a troy ounce. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Gerrans with more on what's going on around the world.
Sandra, thank you. Italy's Matteo Salvini has suffered a stinging defeat in a key regional election. It provides a much-needed boost to Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte's fragile government. Salvini had hoped that winning in the northern Emilia-Romagna regional vote would deal a fatal blow to Conte, forcing early national elections that Salvini would be likely to win. Israel is allowing its citizens limited travel to Saudi Arabia for Islamic pilgrimages or business trips. Up to now, Israelis have been prohibited from visiting the kingdom. The announcement comes ahead of a rollout of the US's Mideast peace plan. It will still be difficult for Israelis to travel to Saudi as no airlines fly directly between the two countries. And elsewhere, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he'll make history with President Trump. He's visiting Washington this week as a US leader is slated to present his Mideast peace plan. Also visiting the White House, Netanyahu's main rival, former military chief Benny Gantz, Israel is set to hold its third election in less than a year in March. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg Naira.
Leanne, thank you so much. Now, as we've been discussing all morning, risk-off sentiment is seizing the markets cross-asset today on fears of the spread of the coronavirus. Joining us in the London studio to discuss this and more, Berenberg senior economist Callum Pickering. Callum, great to see you. There's two things that I think we're trying to assess at the moment. The scale and effectiveness of the containment by China of this virus, as we have heard of cases globally now, but also the impact on consumption. You're an economist, so I'll ask you about the impact on consumption, which is arguably the more difficult thing to quantify at the moment. But at this point in the story, are you worried about the impact on consumption, China's growth, and therefore global growth of the spread of the coronavirus?
It's clearly a risk that we hadn't anticipated at the start of the year. There are two ways to think about this. First is the consumer issue. Typically, if you have a pandemic, you get distributional effects on consumption. So a lack of consumption in 1 or 2 quarters because the outbreak is then corrected 2 or 3 quarters thereafter. But this happens around the new year, so it's likely that you just lose some consumption if it goes right through the Lunar New Year. What worries me more is actually the production side of it. China is the big producer of durable goods in the global economy. If you have to quarantine major cities in China, suddenly then supply side of the economy is not functioning as well as it could. Goods aren't traveling around the country so easily, you can't get things in and out. That's major disruption for the global economy. So supply side disruptions for the global economy is the thing to watch. But again, if we look back, there are no major historical precedents. Maybe you think about SARS. The Western world did not see major impacts on its consumption or production when SARS was taking place some 17 years ago. China is roughly twice as important for the global economy today. So we worry about that a little bit more. But again, I go back to the distributional issue. A little bit like bad weather, what you lose in one quarter, you typically gain back in another. So over the course of the year, I wouldn't expect much impact, but we might get some large distributional effects if these risks grow.
So if we're looking for evidence of the production changes and things like this, or demand, I suppose, as well, first of all, oil is the obvious one. It's ticked up. We've seen the position this morning where the price has been coming down. We've seen this concern growing. We've seen the Saudis coming out and saying no impact as yet. But clearly the market doesn't quite believe that. Is that where we're likely to see the most obvious impact?
Well, the market is trying to guess what the economic impact will be. Ultimately, we have to wait for some survey or hard data to see what the genuine economic impact will be. My inclination is we should look at places like South Korea, like Taiwan, Malaysia, Singapore, the exporters and traders with China that are involved in the production of intermediate goods, i.e. the goods that flow in and out of China that are linked to the supply chain. Typically, you get some early survey data out of that, but we'd still have to wait probably to the end of the month, perhaps early February, before we get a handle on what is happening on the ground. So for now, the market is reacting to uncertainty. How long will this last? How big will the problem be? And to what extent will it affect the global economy? The reaction makes sense. Again, base case is actually the economic impacts on a 1-year basis will be fairly minimal. What we should watch for is a potential near-term disruption followed by a correction thereafter with some local effects in China because of how it disrupts the new year.
If the developed world might be a little bit more shielded from these effects than emerging markets, and you're looking to vulnerable areas in emerging markets, would the ones to focus on be the emerging markets that would have stood to benefit the most from a détente in US-China trade?
That's actually a pretty good way to look at it, yes. And I would, just taking it purely from the market's point of view, the big gain we get in the global economy from the breakthrough on global trade, on US-China trade, is that we sell our safe dollar assets and we start looking for yield in emerging markets, in the other exciting parts of the global economy. This puts us back into risk-off mode. We live in an age of anxiety. That's my base case for any problem. This is an age of anxiety. It doesn't take much for us to start fretting about things. So what you probably find is that emerging markets that would have received the flurry of cash at the beginning of the year may just have to wait a little bit longer. But the overriding theme is actually we're making progress on trade. So with a bit of luck, we knock on wood, this is not a major problem, the coronavirus, and by spring, by the middle of next year, emerging markets are benefiting from the big political trend, which is the progress in US-China trade.
Well, which are the emerging markets that we should look at specifically, do you think, for that?
The most commodity-oriented emerging market, because if we correct the downturn in industrial production of last year and trade, typically you'll see higher demand for commodities there at the early input stage. And I would also look around China, the Malaysias, the South Koreas, the Taiwans that are involved in the supply chain, the production of intermediate goods, because you should expect, actually, on top of the trade breakthrough, there's an ongoing stimulus in China. You'll see higher demand for the goods from those countries into the middle of the year.
Yeah, and I also start to question how targeted the stimulus might be this year from China. If this spread of the virus gets worse, perhaps we might start to question whether the stimulus is more broad-based. But let's turn to Europe, Callum, because we've only got a couple of minutes or so left. And of course, BTP's strongly bid today on the result from the Emilia-Romagna election. How bullish would you be advising investors to be in BTPs right now with a 10-year yield on a 105 handle?
The bond market, from a purely economics point of view, doesn't really make much sense to me, but I've been saying that now for a few years. I take a look at the outlook for inflation and nominal GDP growth, and okay, it's subdued, but the idea that we have negative rates in Germany, it doesn't make sense. We have a slow motion stimulus. We'll have higher demand for government bonds over the near term. So most likely it's up from here, but again, we've been revising our forecasts down for long-term bond yields for a few years now, along with the rest of the market. So in a deflationary world where we're risk off, yes, the bond market makes sense in context of the habits that we've seen. The one point I would make is the Italian situation, in one way or the other, is not candidate for a debt crisis during the next downturn. So my bet would be figure out when the next downturn comes and then worry about Italy. Otherwise, just expect them to muddle through whichever colours the government has. That's the base case. It's near, but ultimately we won't see a major debt crisis. That would happen during the next downturn.
Does the gilt market make sense in terms of pricing a BOE rate cut for January while sterling stays shielded?
If I think big fiscal stimulus likely in the UK, growing inflation risks over the medium term, a recovery in demand, that's what survey data suggests, I'd expect gilt yields over the next, say, 18 months should be up 100 basis points. But again, that's looking at economic fundamentals. If I think about the global risk appetite, that colours that outlook somewhat. I don't think the Bank of England will cut on Friday. 40% chance of that. I think the market's currently around 50%. It's come down quite a lot. The argument for a cut was pretty strong last year when the economic data was bad and you could see election risks unfolding. Now the argument for a cut has weakened significantly. Yep. The survey data is pretty good. All the evidence suggests that the economy weakened into the election and then rebounded thereafter. Add to that the fiscal stimulus. Wait and see is the best mode for the Bank of England.
All right, Callum, thanks very much. Callum Pickering there, Berenberg, senior economist, joining us live in our London studio. And coming up in the next hour of Daybreak Europe, we're going to get the German IFO Business Climate Survey Index after Friday's better-than-expected Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index for January. We'll see how that plays out. And right now, of course, the markets, still very much roiled by what's been going on over the news from China.
Certainly, we're seeing European equities fall after gains on Friday, down 1.4% on the Stock 600. US futures pointing to losses as well after the biggest drop since October for the S&P 500 on Friday. This is Bloomberg.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Mix it up, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, A sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
What we're now seeing for the first time is this facade of absolute unity beginning to break down in the EU.
We expect that there will be some type of slowdown recession beyond 2019.
The European banking system, although recovering, hasn't recovered, and there are areas of fragility.
We've seen this before, trade talks that lead nowhere, and then tariffs. We just swing from one to the other, and markets get caught in the middle.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe with Anna Edwards and Matt Miller on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning from London. I'm Anna Edwards. You're listening to Daybreak Europe live on London DAB Digital Radio. Matt Miller, my colleague in Berlin, joins us shortly. And speaking of Berlin, speaking of Germany, we're getting some breaking news coming through. The IFO index, that measure of German business confidence. The index comes in at 95.9. The estimate was 97, so that looks to be weaker than had been anticipated. This is a January measure as well. The current assessment index, 99.1, exactly in line with the estimate. The expectation index, though, that's where the weakness comes, 92.9 versus an estimate of 94.8. So those further out future expectations that German business has of its own, the way it will fare, that comes in below estimates. And so despite the fact that maybe we are seeing a bottoming out in European data, certainly some guests that we talk about looking for it, at least, even if it remains a little elusive, we're not seeing necessarily a bottoming out in the confidence number. So 95.9, the estimate 97 for the overall business confidence index on the IFO. Is that moving the euro all that much? No, not really. 110 handle is where we are. 110.23 is where we trade on euro dollar. So that's what we're seeing in terms of the IFO story. And we will be speaking a little bit later on to Clemens Fist, who joins us from the IFO Institute. So certainly that'll be something you'll want to listen for, that in around 15 minutes time. We check the data more broadly every 15 minutes here on Bloomberg Radio. So let's do that right now. We've got European equity markets very much on the back foot, down by 1.5% on the Stoxx 600. The FTSE 100 down by 1.7%, as is the CAC 40. The Xetra DAX down 1.5%. Only the FTSE MIB over in Italy is doing a little better, and that is because of the resilience and outperformance of the financials there. We've seen a tightening in BTP spreads versus Germany, basically a little bit of that risk unwinding in Italian assets because of the results of a regional election over the weekend. And as a result, we see a bounce in some Italian financials. So that's why we see Italy outperform a little bit. In terms of the sector picture that we're seeing broadly across Europe, though, we see basic resources as the worst performing sector, down by 3.6% for mining stocks. We'd seen iron ore prices down as much as 6% in the Singapore session, so no surprise that we see weakness. Travel and leisure also being hit hard. Here in Europe, down by 2.2%. Technology, perhaps priced to perfection. We'll get a lot of results from the technology sector around the middle of next week, around the middle of this week, at least in the next couple of days. So that sector down by 1.9%. So we see weakness in every sector for the European equity markets. Utilities and real estate, the best performing, but even those, bond proxies, dividend payers, even those look to be in negative territory today. So that's where we are on the European equity markets. This follows a negative session for Asian markets, down by 0.7% on the MSCI Asia Pacific. But of course, as Matt Miller joins us in Berlin, many of the markets were closed in the Asian session. The Japanese market, though, was open and weaker.
Yeah, the biggest drop for the Nikkei 225 since August of last year. So it was pretty severe, and we're seeing that spread across, maybe worse in Europe than it will be in the U.S. Because remember, we were up big at the end of the session on Friday here, and then the U.S. markets came down on more virus concerns. Exactly. Let's talk a little bit more about what's going on there. China has extended the Lunar New Year holiday to help stem the spread of the coronavirus. It continues to trigger new infections around the globe. The number of people killed by the illness has now risen to at least 80. For more, let's go live to Beijing, where Bloomberg's executive editor for Greater China, John Liu, is standing by. John, what do we know now about how China is responding? It seems like their response continues to escalate.
That's right, Matt. The Premier, Li Keqiang, was in Wuhan today. That's, of course, the epicenter of this outbreak. He's visiting doctors and nurses at the front line, hospitals across the city. He's there to try to give people some confidence, assurance that the government is there to help them. The Chinese are trying to get supplies, medical supplies in as much as possible. Those have been running short in the city. And, of course, this is in the broader context of extending the New Year holiday. Folks are supposed to go back to work on Friday. That's now going to happen next Monday. And also, of course, we've got about a dozen cities in Hubei province, which Wuhan is the capital of, on lockdown. People aren't able to get on trains, planes, or freeways to get in or out. So the effort has been massive.
The effort has been massive. This is what the Chinese authorities are doing, some quite unprecedented measures to try and tackle this. What about other countries? We see fears spreading to other parts of Asia, of course, and measures being taken there.
That's right. The vast majority of infections have been inside China so far. I think the figure is 98%. Of the 29 or so infections we've had outside of China, 26 have been people who have been to Wuhan. And so right now, for most countries, the main thing they're trying to do is to make sure they know who potentially in country already could be infected and who potentially coming into country could be infected. There have been some cases of secondary infections. We know of one case in Vietnam where someone who had no travel record to China was infected because their family members have been to Wuhan. But so far, that sort of secondary infection has been pretty rare.
Thanks very much, John. Thanks for the update. Bloomberg Executive Editor for Greater China, John Liu. And Matt, I thought it was really interesting. We were speaking to a doctor from Imperial College a little earlier on, and he was talking about a measure of the fatality rate here, because I think many investors and anybody who's watching the human tragedy and the human drama unfold here, wanting to get their heads around the fatality rate here. He talked about the case fatality rate being 3%, it seems, which is a little more than what it would be for influenza. He didn't give us the exact number for seasonal influenza, but that is interesting, isn't it, in the context of how much attention this should be getting from the investment community. But then, of course, it's not just the virus itself, it's the measures that the Chinese authorities are taking to try and stem it.
It is interesting that many people, more people die from this than from seasonal flu. And you can throw in there also a number of theories about the numbers being lower than they could be, because pneumonia deaths may be mistaken as these deaths may be mistaken as pneumonia deaths, and it's taken a while for the virus to show symptoms. I think it takes about 2 weeks. That's what I've read so far, after you get the virus before it shows symptoms. So a number of cases may have been misdiagnosed. Let's get the market reaction to this so far. We bring in Laura Cooper, Markets Live strategist out of London, to talk about what we've seen as a result. Safe havens have been bid, and James Athey, Laura, was pointing out earlier that bond U.S. Treasury yields have fallen 30 basis points since their high.
Yes, so certainly, we've seen that on Friday. We saw that action in terms of bid for treasuries, because we saw the 10-year slip to 164, and now it's just slightly below that. And that's the lowest that it's been since about October of last year. And given that we're going to continue to see this uncertainty, just given the fact that we expect to continue to see this uncertainty going forward, that we would expect that U.S. 10-year treasuries to continue to be bid, and it's likely the case that we're going to see basis points fall to about 140, I would say.
So we are seeing some reaction, aren't we, in credit markets. We talked a little earlier on, Laura, about where in the credit markets we're seeing this, and I suppose it applies to many different asset types, that sometimes when these things happen, you don't sell what you want to sell, you sell what you can sell. And at the moment, lots of Chinese markets are closed, for example. There's not much liquidity in some parts of Asia. And so that leads to some sort of unforeseen developments, I suppose, in markets.
Well, absolutely. And I think it's the case that, because we are seeing Chinese markets close, that as we get greater clarity in terms of how this outbreak is spreading, if it does turn out to be the case by the end of the week that we are seeing some signs of containment, it is quite likely that we're going to see this pent-up demand return to markets when they open potentially next week, and we could see a V-shaped recovery across equities there. Where do you see
the most possibility for gains if this gets worse? I hate to phrase the question like that because we don't want it to get worse, but I'm looking at the dollar now can only buy less than 109 yen, so that doesn't seem like a safe haven that's bid. The gold price at 1580 is, I guess, relatively high historically, but it's been at this level since before the coronavirus. So it seems like there could be a lot more room for those to run.
Well, I think taking a step back, I think the U.S. Treasury market does continue to be your likely best risk hedge in this current uncertain environment. Because when we look at the Japanese yen, yes, it does have these safe haven qualities, but then once you hold Japanese yen, I mean, certainly where are you going to put it? Because when we look at 10-year JGBs in Japan, it's returning a negative yield. And then when we look at gold, I think the reason why we've seen gold come off its earlier spike is because it is so integral in terms of Chinese spending at this time of year. So the fact that Chinese aggregate demand is likely to be subdued, given that what's occurring there, that is unlikely to propel gold significantly higher right now. So I think the Treasury market does remain the best buy at this stage.
Laura, thanks very much. Thanks very much for bringing us the market perspective on this developing story. Markets Live strategist Laura Cooper here in our London studio.
All right, let's get the global news headlines now. For that, we go to Leanne Gerrans. Leanne?
Matt, good morning. Let's start in Italy, where Matteo Salvini has suffered a stinging defeat in a key regional vote. It provides a much-needed boost to Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte's fragile government. Salvini had hoped that winning in the northern Emilia-Romagna region would deal a fatal blow to Conte, forcing early national elections that Salvini would be likely to win. Basketball icon Kobe Bryant, who won 5 NBA championships with the LA Lakers, has died in a helicopter crash. The star was among 9 people killed in the incident in Calabasas, California, including his 13-year-old daughter. He spoke of her proudly on an American talk show.
Fans will come up to me and she'll be standing next to me and they'll be like, hey, you got to have a boy. You and V got to have a boy, man. You have somebody carry on the tradition, the legacy. She's like, oh, I got this.
Bryant leaves a legacy that spanned 20 years in professional sports and a growing second career as an investor. Now to the impeachment trial. Donald Trump's lawyers say House Democrats have failed to provide their case for impeaching the president. The U.S. leader's legal team spoke for about 2 hours on Saturday in what they called a preview for their broader defense. They will resume later today. White House counsel Pat Cipollone said Democrats are attempting to perpetrate the most massive interference in an election in American history.
They're asking you to remove President Trump from the ballot in an election that's occurring in approximately 9 months. They're asking you to tear up all of the ballots across this country on your own initiative.
And elsewhere, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he'll make history with President Trump. He's visiting Washington this week as the U.S. leader is due to present his Middle East peace plan. Also visiting the White House is Netanyahu's main rival, former military chief Benny Gantz. Israel is set to hold its third election in less than a year in March. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Anna.
Thanks very much for that, Leanne. Let's take a look at some of the things you should be watching out for this week. Of course, the market's very preoccupied with the coronavirus, so we'll completely continue to cover that story, of course. Investors will also be keeping an eye on the tech earnings season. Tomorrow, we start that in earnest. We begin with Apple. That's followed by Facebook, then Microsoft and Amazon later in the week. It's also a big week for central banks. We hear from the Fed on Wednesday and the Bank of England on Thursday. A lot of excitement in markets, I guess, as to whether or not we see a cut in interest rates from the BOE. Also on Thursday, Deutsche Bank reports earnings. And finally on Friday, it is Brexit Day as the UK is set to leave the EU. Matt?
All right, still ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. We are going to bring you, we bring you traffic and travel, of course. And we're going to bring you an interview with the head of the EFO survey. It came out worse than expected. We'll bring you Clayman's Fist next. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, y'all. Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
In today's volatile markets, investors need resilient portfolios to help handle the pressure. Through decades of expansions and recessions and changing interest rates, clients have turned to PIMCO to help them stay on course, no matter what course markets take. PIMCO, active fixed income solutions that aim to give investors an edge. All investments contain risk and may lose value. Investing in the bond market is subject to risks. Consult your investment professional prior to making an investment decision.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me. I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Riggs.
Transforming the retail industry, that's what Poshmark aims to do as a social commerce platform. Launched in 2011, the company has a mission to build the world's most connected shopping experience. For more, I'm joined by Poshmark co-founder Tracy Sun. How do you differentiate yourself from competitors?
What we're really focused on is we take social and we take commerce. We blend it together in a way that's really unique that hasn't been done before. So what we really focus on is using technology to help people connect to one another in the Poshmark community. And often it's through their love of fashion and now home, but it can also be about what's going on in their lives. It's a true, authentic connection.
Do you ever plan to expand and do the reverse and go into retail stores, or do you like to be just online?
Well, you know, it's really interesting to see what's going on in the physical world today. So many things are changing in retail. It's been really fun to watch. You see D2C brands that were born online that all of a sudden are opening up stores, and then we have physical retailers who own the physical space, really building robust omni-channel strategies. So for Poshmark, because we're such a unique player in the space, for us, physical is going to look different because we think connection is so important to commerce. We spend the energy hosting these meetups where people can connect with one another, and then they bring those relationships online into Poshmark.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters here in London, I'm Caroline Hepker with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. So in terms of the equity markets this morning, European stocks drop. We're down 1.7% on the Stoxx 600, down almost 2 full percentage points on the FTSE 100. Xetra DAX tumbles 1.7%. Obviously, the overriding concern is about the coronavirus, its spread, what it will mean for people and the economy. This, as we also see 10-year Treasury yields and West Texas crude both hit their lowest levels since October. In terms of where we stand right now, crude on WTI dropped 3.1%, so trading at $52.49 the barrel. Brent crude at $58.87, so also down 3 percentage points. US benchmark yields trade at 1.62%, so we're down more than 6 basis points right now. German Bund yields at negative 36, so also dropping 3 basis points. There is one other story in Europe, which is around Italy and the fact that BTPs there are down now 19%, so we trade at 1.04 for Italian bonds. They jump after the regional elections on Sunday, basically back the current coalition government and perhaps put snap elections, certainly make that possibility much more distant. And in terms of Asian markets and where they stood, most of them were, or a lot of them were closed for the Lunar New Year holiday, just with the exception of Japan, but we also saw stocks stocks slumped there, and the yen climbing. Safe havens very much in play as we have this health concern. So the Japanese yen spot price up by 0.3% at 108.89. And just looking ahead to the US market open, we're down by 1.1% on S&P 500 E-mini futures. So there's really one major story, and that is how to contain the coronavirus. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Gerrans with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning.
Good morning, Caroline. As Caroline just mentioned, the death toll from China's coronavirus has risen to at least 80. That's as the nation has extended its Lunar New Year holiday by 3 days to combat the outbreak, and it's continuing to spread. Over 2,700 cases have been reported in China, as well as in at least 15 other countries and territories. President Xi Jinping is pushing local officials to strengthen prevention and contamination. Israel is allowing its citizens limited travel to Saudi Arabia for Islamic pilgrimages or business trips. Up to now, Israelis had been prohibited from visiting the kingdom. The announcement comes ahead of the rollout of the US's Mideast peace plan. And finally, Turkey's Erdogan has blasted an agreement to halt fighting in Libya as he squabbled with German Chancellor Angela Merkel over the viability of the accord. During a visit to Istanbul on Friday, the two leaders bickered in front of reporters over the stability of the agreement. The doubts were confirmed over the weekend, with the UN saying that proxy powers in the conflict had continued to deliver weapons to Libya. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Matt.
Leanne, thanks very much. Now, breaking earlier this hour, the headline German Ifo Business Climate Index came in at 95.9 in January, weaker than last month's 96.3 and missing the consensus estimate, pointing to a reading of 97. So disappointing no matter how you look at it. Joining me down the line from Munich is the Ifo president, Dr. Clemens Fist. Dr. Fist, how do we explain this miss?
Yes, good morning, Matt. I think this miss demonstrates that the overall situation of the German economy is still fragile. At the same time, the good news is that this time the weakness is coming from construction and services, while manufacturing is recovering. And because manufacturing is really the sector driving the German economy, the sector that did have major problems last year, I think this is good news also.
What do you think about the outlook here being driven by settling of uncertainties? It looks like Brexit is going to be wrapped up. It looks like people are more satisfied with the German government spending plans. It looks like the new ECB president is warming up to her new home in Frankfurt. How's that?
I think that does play a role, although there still are uncertainties, especially regarding Brexit. We've got 11 months now to come up with a trade agreement, so the next deadline, if you like, is looming. But it's true, some uncertainty is retreating. Also, one gets the impression that the likelihood of a full-blown trade war between the US and China is retreating. There are still threats regarding tariffs on European products coming from Washington, but I don't think they are very credible. They seem to be more directed at fending off digital taxes or maybe carbon taxes, but one gets the impression that Trump has no interest in starting another trade war with Europe in the election year. So overall, uncertainty does seem to be retreating. That's right.
Dr. Fist, good morning. Anna in London. What should we read into the fact that the forward-looking expectations component is where we saw the slide?
Good morning. Yes, I think that shows that in services where this is coming from, services, more companies are maybe concerned about the industrial outlook. At the same time, industry is recovering. We see the weakness in particular in services that are close to manufacturing, like logistics, for instance. But we have to wait whether this is really sustained. I wouldn't be surprised if that recovered in the coming months. So then what outlook do you have for your survey going forward? I mean, do you think these numbers are going to start to really improve? Well, we'll have to see, but the outlook for the German economy is not so bad. So our forecast says the German economy will stabilize coming in 2020 at around 1% of growth after 0.5 last year. So we do expect an overall stabilization, and we do expect the recovery in manufacturing to continue.
Dr. Fist, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us. From Munich, the IFO president, Dr. Clemens Fist.
All right, so that was his take on the EFO number. It's still a disappointment in terms of what the market was looking for, and a miss compared to the prior, or lower than what we saw in the prior month. Straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, a setback for Salvini. The leader of Italy's right-wing League Party is defeated in a key regional vote, providing a boost to Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte's government. We're live in Bologna next. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. A DraftKings fantasy baseball player filed a would-be class action lawsuit against Major League Baseball, MLB Advanced Media, the Houston Astros, and the Boston Red Sox over the unfolding sign-stealing scandal. Christopher Olson seeks to recover damages for defendants' wrongful promotion of fantasy baseball wagering competitions that they caused to be and knew or should have known were corrupt and dishonest. It comes after an MLB investigation concluded the Astros and Red Sox used a camera system to steal signs. MLB is supporting the U.S. women's softball team, which already has assured a spot in the Tokyo Olympics, while the American men's baseball team struggles to qualify. The league announced an agreement to become presenting sponsor of the Women's Stand Beside Her Tour, a slate of exhibition games leading up to the Olympic tournament in July. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports Report. I'm Michael Barr.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
IBKR is the professional's gateway to the world's markets. IBKR offers commissions starting at $0 for U.S.-listed stocks and ETFs, enhanced price execution via IB Smart Routing, and access to our powerful trader workstation, web, mobile, and API trading platforms. In addition, our clients enjoy the lowest cost access to stocks, options, futures, Forex, fixed income, and more on over 125 markets in 31 countries. Learn more or open an IBKR integrated investment account at IBKR.com.
Why has boredom, fitness enemy number one? So don't just run. Mix it up, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
This is the sound of a Halifax customer who used to worry he wasn't saving enough, but is now saving the change every time he hops on a bus. Switch on Save the Change, and when you use your Halifax Visa debit card, we'll round up to the nearest pound and put the difference into your chosen Halifax savings account.
Had the same job for the last 15 years? Working with the same people, in the same office, drinking tea from the same comedy mug, eating the same crayfish and rocket sandwich every lunchtime, using the same business jargon, and climbing the same greasy pole. What does that even mean? Then maybe it's time to switch it up, starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa. With its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB Digital Radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Good morning from the Bloomberg Bureau in Berlin. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Anna Edwards in London. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. And Matt, extensive selling across European equities as we track the market reaction to the human scale of the virus that is building in China.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at losses of 2%, more than 2%. In London, in Paris, the CAC is down about that much, and in Frankfurt, the DAX is down almost 1.75%. We also see U.S. equity index futures falling right now in similar size or scales. Dow and S&P mini contracts are down more than 1%. NASDAQ mini contracts down about 1.5%. And this is an important week for some of the biggest tech companies in the world will be presenting earnings. In terms of where people are putting their money, they are buying, oddly enough right now, buying the dollar against the yen. So you'd expect that to be a safe haven bid, but the yen is gaining strength, the dollar is losing it, 108.90 right now. They are buying U.S. Treasuries, pushing the yield down to 1.62%. So Treasuries, the yield on Treasuries falling pretty dramatically, and the price of gold rising right now 0.2% as well. $1,581.83 a troy ounce, the level there. Also, watch oil. Brent crude down to $58.75 a barrel, even though the Saudis are saying they expect limited impact from the contagion, the spread of this virus, that, of course, hurting the economy and that hurting demand. But it looks like the market disagrees.
Yeah, the market disagrees there, and the market's also buying BTPs, that's Italian debt. Let's talk about what's going on in Italy, and also buying Italian banks right now. So BTPs are rallying this morning after Italy's Matteo Salvini suffered a stinging defeat in a key regional vote. It provides a much-needed boost to Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte's fragile government and makes a snap general election less likely. For more, let's go live to Emilia-Romagna, where Bloomberg's Maria Taddeo joins us from Bologna, the region's capital city. Maria, it's the regional election that's taken place where you are that is the focus for markets. Where does this leave the fragile Italian coalition then, given the results we saw at the weekend?
Well, this is good news for the Conte administration because they were concerned that losing a region like Emilia-Romagna, which is such a stronghold for the Italian left, for the Social Democrats, would have triggered a snap election. Snap election would have triggered another government crisis, and perhaps that could have seen the return of Salvini. We're actually expecting Salvini to officially concede that he's lost the election, and it feels like a very personal defeat for Salvini because he was all over this region. He really made this about himself. He made this a national story, and he said this was in many ways a vote of confidence on the Italian coalition. So for the government in Rome, very good news. It's also interesting to see how the balance of power in that coalition has also shifted. The PD, which is the more, I would say, mainstream center-left, more establishment group, is leading now, and they have the upper hand, at least when it comes to Emilia-Romagna, and the Five Star, which did so well just 2 years ago, were completely wiped out. Yeah. yesterday. So that is also interesting because that balance of power in Rome could be about to change for a more establishment option. And when it comes to Salvini, well, he's, as I mentioned, just about to concede that he's lost the election, and it feels like a very personal defeat for him.
What are the implications for markets, Maria?
Well, I would read this in three different ways, Matt. What you see is that Salvini, that risk that he could be back in government, and there's always so many question marks about what Salvini and the people around him especially think about the euro, the European Union, the fiscal rules. That has moved away. The market is reading the situation thinking this coalition has every incentive to stay together. We're going to have the same coalition for the next 3 years, perhaps shaky, perhaps weak, but we do have a theme of continuation, and this is a pro-European administration. When you look at also that balance of power, as I mentioned, it's also shifted to an extent where the markets are also thinking overall it was not a good night for the populist parties, which both actually lost. The Five Star was, as I mentioned, wiped out of the election. It was a terrible night for them, and the League was really not able to seal the deal. So I think that they're kind of reading those two ways. There's still a theme of continuation, but also the idea that the Five Star and the League, which at one point said they would shake up Italian politics, are actually not doing that well if you look at the numbers.
At the same time, our colleague Ferdinando Giuliano, Bloomberg Opinion, Maria, writing that it would be foolish to rule out the League because Emilia Romagna was always going to be an ambitious target, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And this is why this was so significant. And yesterday we actually had another election happening in the south where the League and the center-right won that vote. But it was really this region that could have been such a shift in the politics here. This has been a region for many years, even prior to the Second World War, that has been more of a center-left socialist region. But it is foolish to say that Salvini is gone and out of the picture. He's someone that's very popular. You see it when he speaks to the average Italian who really knows how to speak to people in a way that is simple, that goes straight to their guts, their hearts. Is very good at that. But also, I would say when you look at the execution of his strategy, he's not been very good at that because he took two major gambles this year, and both of them in summer, I'm sure you remember that crisis, and this one, and both did not work.
Thanks very much, Maria. Bloomberg's Maria Tadeo joining us there from Bologna.
Let's get your global news headlines. For that, we go to Leanne Gerrans. Leanne?
Good morning, Matt. Let's start with one of our top stories. China has extended the Lunar New Year holiday to February the 2nd to try to limit the spread of the Wuhan virus. Bloomberg's Brian Curtis has more from Hong Kong.
The most shocking revelation so far, Wuhan Mayor Zhou Xianwang said 5 million people left the city before the lockdown on travel. That spooked markets. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang is visiting Wuhan today to assess conditions. Hong Kong has moved to bar all entry of travelers from Hubei province, where Wuhan is based. And the government here raised the response to emergency, shut down Disneyland and Ocean Park, and canceled the marathon. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg, Daybreak Europe.
In the last half an hour, Slovenia's Prime Minister has resigned. Marjan Sarek says the current coalition is unable to deliver on promises. Talks on a new government are expected to start. Now to the U.S. Senate Republicans are facing increased pressure to call witnesses in President Trump's impeachment trial. That's after a report in the New York Times says Trump wanted a continued freeze on Ukrainian aid back in August. It cites former National Security Advisor John Bolton. He was fired by the president in September. A magnitude 6.8 earthquake in Turkey's eastern Elazig province on Friday has killed at least 38 people and injured hundreds. Bloomberg's Kajan Nok reports.
45 people had been rescued from the rubble of collapsed buildings, and a total of 76 buildings were destroyed, according to the Interior Ministry. Turkey is situated in a seismically active area and is among countries, including China and Iran, that can experience catastrophic earthquakes. In Istanbul, Çağan Koç, Bloomberg Daybreak, Europe.
And basketball icon Kobe Bryant has died in a helicopter crash. 9 people were killed in the incident, including his 13-year-old daughter. Bryant leaves a legacy spanning 20 years, having won 5 NBA championships with the Los Angeles Lakers. The NBA's commissioner says the league is devastated by the news. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Gerrans. This is Bloomberg. Anna.
Leanne, thanks very very much. Now with your morning sports news, here's Colin Besley.
Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp wants the Premier League and FA Cup organisers to get together and find a solution to fixture congestion. The European champions were held 2-2 at third-tier Shrewsbury in the fourth round of the Cup, so will need a replay at Anfield during the winter break. Klopp says he'll be forced to follow the wishes of the league, though.
They ask us for respecting the winter break, organising no international friendlies or competitive games, so we do that. We respect the winter break. So we will be in the winter break, and in 2 weeks' time, our youngsters will play against Shrewsbury at Anfield.
Elsewhere, Manchester United thrashed Tranmere 6-0, while holders Manchester City progressed to the last 16 with a 4-0 win over Fulham. There's an all-top-flight clash after this evening's fifth-round draw, with Bournemouth taking on Arsenal. And Saracens suffered a big defeat in their first Rugby Union Premiership match since accepting relegation. The English and European champions were thrashed 41-14 by Harlequins at the Stoop. Sarries will drop down to the Championship at the end of the season as part of their punishment for breaching the salary cap.
Let's get the U.S. sports now with Pete Fox. Pete?
Tragic event from the sports world Sunday morning in L.A. Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter Gianna, and 7 others died in a helicopter crash north of L.A. traveling to the Mamba Basketball Academy in Calabasas. Bryant was 41. From the day on the NBA hardwood, the Celtics' 3-game winning streak halted in New Orleans by the Pelicans 123-108. Drew Holiday with 25. Kemba Walker had 35 in the loss. At Madison Square Garden, the Knicks take down the Nets 110-97. Brooklyn without Kyrie Irving, who was too devastated to play after hearing the news of Kobe's death.
Let's tell you what's coming up here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. Havens are rallying amid fears over the coronavirus. We discussed the market implications with Kit Jukes, Chief Currency Strategist at Societe Generale. A reminder, you can listen back to a selection of our interviews at BloombergRadio.com or on the Bloomberg Business app. More on the markets in just a moment. This is Bloomberg.
Welcome back to the Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive. And now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
The happy dance so common with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
You knew the risks when you decided to drive drunk. There could be a crash. People could get hurt or killed. But that didn't stop you, did it? You knew you could get arrested. You could incur huge legal expenses, and you could possibly even lose your job. You were well aware of the consequences of driving drunk. But one thing's for sure. You were wrong when you said it was no big deal. Drive sober or get pulled over. This message brought to you by NHTSA.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up, lift. Mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night, and somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here, testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
So, this is how it is, Money. My daughter has flown the nest. I put up 10% as security for her new home. And when she keeps up with her repayments, I'm going to get it all back with interest in 5 years from Barclays. I will miss her. I'll even miss Dave, her cat. So come on, Money. How about we go buy a kitten? Barclays Family Springboard Mortgage. Make money work for you.
Your home may be repossessed if mortgage payments are missed. Deposit returned with interest after 5 years if no repayments missed. Subject to application, financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's apply.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Dan?
So my baby boy Ben and me just wanted to share what we do to look after the environment. We put the wet wipes we use in the bin instead of down the loo. Would be pretty nasty if that lot ended up blocking our pipes.
Wet wipes and nappies block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin, where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters here in London, I'm Caroline Hepker with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. So we are firmly in the red, down 1.7% on the Euro Stoxx 600. All 19 industry groups are in the red because of fears of around the coronavirus, the spread of the disease and what that will mean for both people and the economy in China and the world. Miners and luxury goods names are some of the biggest losers today. For example, LVMH, that's down by 3.5%, and also Anglo-American dropping more than 5% right now. US futures also significantly lower. Looking ahead to the US market open, we're down by 1.3% on the S&P 500 E-mini futures. Chinese markets and many other Asian markets have been closed for the Lunar New Year holiday, but in Japan we did see stocks slump. Also, the Japanese yen has climbed as we've seen safe havens bid. So we are stronger 0.3% on the Japanese yen, spot price 108.9. Bloomberg dollar spot index also strengthens 0.1%. The British pound rallies also. In terms of the bond market, we trade at 1.62% for US benchmark yields, so down by 6.5 basis points. The other big stories, though, have been in Europe around Italy. We see the Italian BTP is at 1.03 in terms of yield, down by almost 20 basis points. This after the League's Matteo Salvini basically failed in his bid to grab power in some regional elections. So his right-wing populist party losing on Sunday, and that really reinforces the coalition government that little bit longer in Italy. The oil markets, just lastly, do note that we see a big drop in crude futures on WTI crude down 3.3%, trading at $52.37, Brent crude at $58.70. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Goins with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning.
Good morning, Caroline. Italy's Matteo Salvini has suffered a stinging defeat in a key regional vote. It provides a much-needed boost to Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte's fragile government. Salvini had hoped that taking Emilia-Romagna would deal a fatal blow to Conte, forcing early national elections that his League party would likely win. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he'll make history with President Trump. He's visiting Washington this week as a U.S. leader is slated to present his Middle East peace plan. Also visiting the White House, Netanyahu's main rival, former military chief Benny Gantz. Israel is set to hold its third election in less than a year in March. An 18-year-old Billie Eilish has won the top 4 prizes at the Grammy Awards, becoming the first artist to do so in 39 years. Her win comes during a ceremony overshadowed by the sudden death of basketball star Kobe Bryant. The Grammys audience has declined over the years, but the awards can still deliver a sales bump to winning artists. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Goins. This is Bloomberg. Matt.
Leanne, thanks very much. Were you happy with the outcome? Are you a Billie Eilish fan?
Do you know what? I really love her, and it's only because I watch Carpool Karaoke lately, and she went with James Corden into the bedroom in her house where she recorded this phenomenal album. I didn't realize she was 18 and recorded it in her bedroom with her brother.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating story.
Amazing backstory.
I read a lot about her as well. Yeah, great backstory. Leanne, thanks very much for that. Coming up next, our colleagues in the U.S. are getting ready for Bloomberg Daybreak. Nathan Hager in his bedroom with his brother producing the radio show.
If only.
What have you got
like a lot of investors might wish they could just stay in bed this morning, Matt. Certainly with coronavirus worries gripping markets this morning. We are seeing steady declines in European equities, U.S. futures pointing to a much lower open this morning. Of course, most Asian markets are closed for the Lunar New Year holiday, but with China extending that even longer, there's a worry that the Chinese markets could stay closed even longer and keep this crisis going. We're going to have this story covered from all angles, and we have analysis as well on the potential economic impact from this virus. Chris Rupke of MUFG is going to be with us, and so will Commerce Bank Global Equities economist Peter Dixon. They're going to both be with us in the next hour. And meantime, back here in Washington, President Trump's lawyers will continue their case against removing their client from office through impeachment, but the Senate jurors may be under even more pressure to call witnesses now with this bombshell report that came out last night on John Bolton's forthcoming book and what it has to say about aid to Ukraine. Join me and Karen Moscow for all that coming up on the Monday edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. Matt.
I have to say, Chris Rupke is one of my all-time favorite economists. I love his notes. I'm on his email list, so I get his notes, and really looking forward to that interview. Nathan, thanks very much. Nathan Hager coming up with Karen Moscow. Bloomberg Daybreak is up next. If you're listening on Sirius XM, that's channel 119. If you're listening on London DAB, if you're tuned in the city, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance.
Now, stocks are significantly lower today, Matt, amid deepening fears about the impact of the coronavirus. That risk-off mood has also sent oil and China's yuan tumbling. This as China has extended the Lunar New Year holiday to February the 2nd in a bid to try to tackle the spread. For more, let's bring in Kit Jukes, Chief Currency Strategist at Societe Generale. Kit, we see Feb 2nd now, that the markets won't be open until after that. We see talk in Shanghai of companies staying closed until February the 9th. It strikes me that the market is trying to do two things. One is everyone wants to become an epidemiologist and work out how quickly this spreads and how serious it is, but also just evaluating the response we're seeing from the Chinese government and assessing what impact that's going to have on the underlying economy.
Yeah, and I think, in a sense, we're on safer ground on the second of those. The first one, we're not good at this.
No.
So, but on the second one, clearly, the timing's bad. This is a big spending time, a big travelling time of the year in China. It's also just after a period of economic weakness when things are showing signs of stabilising. So it's a knockdown before the economy got itself back up on its feet, and that I think will have an impact. So we're going to start off by being gloomy again about global trade, gloomy again about Chinese growth, looking for lower bond yields to persist there and globally for a while longer, and then we will after that switch to being experts on how bad this is, with I think most people expecting this to be something that doesn't last that long, or most people downplaying hysteria as the sort of kind of analysis that people give. I have no clue, so I'll put that out there. But if we ever look at any past patterns, if we ever think that tells us anything, these kind of things come and pass.
I mean, none of us are immunologists here or doctors of any kind. I always like it when people downplay hysteria. I don't actually, I have to say, I take issue with the word hysteria. I feel like that's a sexist term, hysteria. It's rooted in the Greek. It's rooted in the Greek word for uterus. So
right. Okay.
I'm being perfectly serious. But one thing I know, Kit, is that you can look at the travel ban that the Chinese have placed on their own citizens. Millions and millions and millions, maybe even 1 billion trips will be canceled over Lunar New Year. And you can count on tourists choosing not to go to China this year for vacation. So isn't that going to be really a huge hit, no matter what the spread of the virus turns out to be, to the economy globally?
Yeah, I think that was my point, is that we're on safer ground turning around and saying, given where the economy is now, this is definitely going to be a hit. Look, this is the first year in many years when I haven't been in China at the end of January. My wife's glad. When I told her I'd postpone till May, she wasn't pleased at all. And I think that'll be the pattern, is there'll be fewer people travelling in that region. And it comes at a time, after the protests in Hong Kong, after the hit from the trade dispute. So it's not, it's preventing a bounce that people were tentatively looking for. And you can, if you like, see it in the currency, that it's having been heading towards 720, it was heading towards 680, it's heading back to 7. And that's not a massive reaction. None of those are huge moves, but it tells you the direction of travel. And I think it's hard to believe the currency will be stronger in 1, 3, 6 or 12 months' time.
The numbers we got out of the IFO Institute, the expectations of German business, struggling to cut through, I suppose, given that the moves broadly are being dictated by the coronavirus and are very risk-off. But euro-dollar wobbling a little bit, it seemed, after German IFO expectations missed estimates. How does this fit into the pantheon of German data for you?
Again, the sense we've had of the more recent German data has been of things stabilising. And when you look at this year, you kind of think that the triple whammy, however many whammies it was, but the hit from the diesel crisis, the hit from the global auto downturn, the hit from having been for so long the big winner from trade with China, or from the growth of China, because they sold them machine tools while the rest of us tried to sell them bits and bobs and bought stuff. That last year's sort of catastrophe for the economy. There was hope that there'll be a few more rough months, but then things will be picking up. The longer the Chinese economy is weak, the more vulnerable that looks. So then you look at it and you think, German bond yields, could they be back testing their sort of minus 70 basis point lows? Could all European lows? Because the ECB will be once again under pressure. We'll spend more months talking about how on earth you get European policymakers to ease fiscal policy. There's not much in it for the currency.
Kit, thanks very much. Kit Jukes, Chief Currency Strategist at Societe Generale.
And Kit will be continuing on Bloomberg Surveillance. So if you're listening on London DAB Digital Radio, you'll hear more from him with Tom Keene and Francine Lacroix. This is Bloomberg.
Family properties and
boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. run. Mix it up, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30 gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Monday, January 27th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
U.S. futures fall as the death toll from the coronavirus climbs.
The infection spread accelerates around the world while cases in China grow.
Beijing extends the Lunar New Year holiday to contain the outbreak.
Bond yields fall, oil tumbles, the yen strengthens, and gold gains.
A report involving former National Security Advisor Bolton turns up the heat in the impeachment trial, plus the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad is hit by multiple rockets. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. Remembrances of Kobe Bryant continue to pour in. A tribute at the Garden last night before the Knicks beat the Nets. Week 2 of the Australian Open underway in Melbourne.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by SEI. Visionary asset managers find opportunity where others are challenged. Exploit disruption's potential with SEI's global operating platform. Find out how at SEIC.com/IMS.
And U.S. futures are tumbling to start the week. 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down about 42 points. Dow futures down 358, and NASDAQ futures down 146. The DAX in Germany down 1.9%. CAC in Paris down about 2%, and the FTSE 100 down 2.25%. 10-year Treasury up 19/32, yield 1.61%. The yield on the 2-year 1.43%. NYMEX crude oil is down 3.3% or $1.78 to $52.41 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.7% or $10.90 at $15.89.10 an ounce. And the euro 1.1020 against the dollar. Nathan.
Karen, spreading fear over the coronavirus is rippling across markets. Government reports show the infection spreading around the globe while the cases in China continue to grow. For the very latest, we bring in Bloomberg Daybreak Asia anchor Brian Curtis in Hong Kong. Brian?
Nathan, Karen, the most shocking revelation so far. Wuhan Mayor Zhou Xianwang said 5 million people left the city before the lockdown on travel. That spooked markets. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang is visiting Wuhan today to assess conditions. Hong Kong has moved to bar all entry of travelers from Hubei province, where Wuhan is based. And the government here raised the response to emergency, shut down Disneyland and Ocean Park, and canceled the marathon. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Brian, thank you. The death toll from the coronavirus has now climbed to at least 80. Most financial markets in Asia are closed for a holiday this week. And now we're learning that holiday will extend into next month. For details, we turn to Bloomberg's Brian Fowler in Tokyo.
Beijing came out and decided this morning to extend the Lunar New Year holidays by another 3 days to February 2nd to try to clamp down on the spread of the virus. We don't know yet if markets will also stay closed that long. We also had some tensions flaring in Hong Kong where protesters set fire to a public housing block that was intended to be used as a quarantine facility. So there's a lot of frustration and fear spreading through the region.
Fear is also growing as evidence points to the virus having a 2-week incubation period before patients show symptoms. That raises the possibility of people carrying the virus without knowing it.
Now, China is working hard to contain the outbreak, but that is proving tough for local officials. We get more from Bloomberg's Derek Wallbank in Singapore.
We're seeing some extraordinary things in terms of trying to build up hospitals to address the issue and have them operational from dirt to a hospital in 2 weeks' time. I mean, that sort of aggressive response there, but it's not clear that it's inspiring all of the confidence in the world. One press conference in China today was particularly not helpful, I guess I would say, compounded with errors about face mask production. 2 of the 3 people on stage wearing a face mask incorrectly. So it's not all going brilliantly over here, and I think that it's still a situation where China, where 98% of the cases happen to be, trying to figure out how to stem this.
Over the next few days, China is sending more than 1,600 people to the center of the outbreak to help contain its spread.
Financial markets reacting violently to the virus. U.S. futures down 1 1/3%, while Europe stock 600 is lower by 1.8%. Bond yields are falling on haven demand. Richard Jones is an FX and rate strategist for Bloomberg.
The yields on the U.S. short end are coming off quite sharply. This has been a move that has been gaining momentum over the past week as the coronavirus story has deepened and we've learned more about it. And so we've seen that substantial move last week actually extend, and I expect it'll probably continue extending throughout the day.
Right now, the yield on 10-year treasuries down to 1.61%.
And oil is moving sharply lower as well on fears the virus will hit demand. Saudi Arabia says it is closely monitoring the situation. Carlos Slim is an economist at Standard Chartered in Dubai.
Markets are essentially comparing the new coronavirus with the 2003 SARS epidemic. But back then in 2003, we didn't actually see a year-on-year demand drop. What we saw was a deceleration in demand growth. So that's why we're seeing this excessive pessimism in oil markets today, with Brent prices dropping below $65 over the course of last week.
And they are dropping again this week, now well below $60 a barrel. Right now, Brent is trading at $58.74, a drop of 3.2%.
Japan is the only major market open in Asia today, and it saw the Nikkei slide more than 2%. Saeed Abukarish is senior executive at ARC Capital.
I think we're really underplaying the risk here in terms of the next 2 to 3, 4 days. I think one of the main reasons why the market now is beginning to actually sell off is because we're seeing an extension of the holidays in China. That obviously doesn't bode well for Asian markets over the next few sessions as we seek clarity regarding what is the actual extent of the coronavirus in China.
As stocks in Europe and U.S. futures slide, we're seeing gold gain, the yen strengthen, and commodities fall to the lowest level since September.
So what exactly is this virus that's gripping financial markets? Where is it so far, and how is it being treated? To answer those questions, we bring in Bloomberg's John Tucker, who joins us live. Good morning, John.
Yeah, Nathan, mainland China accounts for 98% of confirmed infections. The U.S. has 5 cases, 2 in Southern California, 1 each in Arizona, Washington State, and Chicago. Symptoms include fever, cough, or chest tightness, and difficulty breathing. The medical journal Lancet says a clinical trial is underway using anti-HIV drugs to treat cases of the virus. The drugs made by AbbVie are part of the Chinese National Health Commission's latest treatment plan. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak. Karen.
All right, John, thank you. Futures again lower this morning. The latest world and national news straight ahead. This is Bloomberg.
All right, thank you, Karen. It's 5:07 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr is here with more on what's going on around the world. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Nathan. Investigators are trying to figure out how a helicopter crash that killed NBA legend Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter, and 7 others. Bryant's helicopter slammed into a hillside in Calabasas, California. Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva.
We do know there was an issue of visibility and a low ceiling. The actual conditions at the time of impact, that is still yet to be determined.
NTSB member Jennifer Hamady.
We will also have 2 staff members from our family assistance team who will be working with the families and other loved ones to help them get their resources that they need over the next couple of days and months.
Kobe Bryant, who won 5 NBA championships with the Los Angeles Lakers, was 41. The stakes over witness testimony at President Trump's impeachment trial are rising now that a draft of a book from former National Security Advisor John Bolton appears to undercut a key defense argument. Bolton writes in the forthcoming book that Trump told him that he wanted to withhold security aid from Ukraine until it helped him politically with investigations, including one about Joe Biden. Democratic presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren in Cedar Rapids, Iowa yesterday criticized her GOP Senate colleagues in light of the new revelations.
The idea that right now the Republicans are trying to hold a so-called trial with no witnesses tells me loud and clear that they've got a lot that they're trying to cover up.
The Trump defense continues when the trial resumes this afternoon. Alan Dershowitz, who is on the Trump legal team, told Fox News Sunday the House passed articles of impeachment and they're not legitimate.
Even if the factual allegations are true, which are highly disputed, in which the defense team will show contrary evidence, but even if true, they did not allege impeachable offenses, so there can't be a constitutionally authorized impeachment. That's the legal constitutional argument.
Fox News Sunday can be heard on Bloomberg Radio. The U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad was hit by multiple rockets yesterday. This is the first time the embassy has been hit directly in years, just weeks after pro-Iranian militia members and their supporters assaulted the compound. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. It's 5:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. A difficult morning in the sports world. Here's John Stashauer.
Nathan, there were 8 NBA games Sunday, all with poignant tributes to Kobe Bryant, who about midway through his Lakers career switched from number 8 to number 24. So before every game last night, the moment of silence lasted 24 seconds, and each team purposely took a 24-second violation. Happened at the Garden. Knicks-Nets game did not have the usual feel of an NBA contest. Kyrie Irving got the news when he arrived, told the Nets he was so distraught he was in no condition to play. Irving went home. The Knicks won the game 110-97. Their coach is Mike Miller.
It didn't really look at it as a challenge. We just, as we go through this, real life things are going on, and our locker room had some heavy hearts in there, and they went out and played, and I would say that it was a tribute to Kobe to go out and play the game as he would play the game.
Kobe once scored 61 points at the Garden. The Lakers got the tragic news while flying home from, ironically, Bryant's native Philadelphia on Saturday. LeBron James actually passed Kobe and moved into third place on the NBA's all-time scoring list. The Lakers play the Clippers at the Staples Center tomorrow night. Farmers Insurance Golf, Torrey Pines in San Diego, and the Aussie Mark Leishman held on 1-2 over John Rahm. They're playing at the Australian Open right now. Rafael Nadal against the Aussie Nick Kyrgios. Nadal won the first set 6-3, but Kyrgios is up 5-2 in the second. Angelique Kerber has won the first set of her match. For the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashauer. Nathan?
And John, the tributes to Kobe Bryant have carried over into Miami, where the Kansas City Chiefs and San Francisco 49ers have landed already ahead of the next Super Bowl. Both teams have paid tribute to Kobe on social media. The 49ers wrote, quote, "A legend gone too soon." Chiefs defensive end Frank Clark said on Twitter, "I'm devastated. R.I.P. to my idol." Chiefs cornerback Bashad Breeland called it a sad day in America. S&P futures are lower by 43 points. That's a drop of 1.3%. This is Bloomberg.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com. And feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Vattel Shaw is senior project engineer at Mott McDonald.
a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Ridge. Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run.
Mix it.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30 gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Television. Here's Taylor Briggs.
Transforming the retail industry, that's what Poshmark aims to do as a social commerce platform. Launched in 2011, the company has a mission to build the world's most connected shopping experience. For more, I'm joined by Poshmark co-founder Tracy Sun. How do you differentiate yourself from competitors?
What we're really focused on is we take social and we take commerce. We blend it together in a way that's really unique that hasn't been done before. So what we really focus on is using technology to help people connect to one another in the Poshmark community. And often it's through their love of fashion and now home, but it can also be about what's going on in their lives. It's a true, authentic connection.
Do you ever plan to expand and do the reverse and go into retail stores, or do you like to be just online?
Well, you know, it's really interesting to see what's going on in the physical world today. So many things are changing in retail. It's been really fun to watch. You see D2C brands that were born online that all of a sudden are opening up stores, and then we have physical retailers who own the physical space, really building robust omnichannel strategies. So for Poshmark, because we're such a unique player in the space, for us, physical is going to look different. Because we think connection is so important to commerce, we spend the energy hosting these meetups where people can connect with one another, and then they bring those relationships online into Poshmark.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Deepening fears about the economic and human impact of the deadly coronavirus sent stocks, oil, and China's yuan tumbling today while spurring haven assets. Italian bonds jumped after regional elections. Major Asian markets were closed for holidays with the exception of those in India and Japan, where stocks again slumped and the yen climbed. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 44 points this morning. Dow futures down 375. NASDAQ futures down 157. The DAX in Germany is down 2%. 10-year Treasury of 1830 seconds yield 1.62%. Yield on the 2-year 1.43%. NYMEX crude oil is down 3.4% at $1.86 at $52.33 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.6% or $10 at $15.8820 an ounce. The euro 1.119 against the dollar. British pound 1.3090, and the yen is at 108.93. And today we are watching for a report on new home sales at 10 o'clock Wall Street time. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Karen. President Trump's defense team continues its case today in the impeachment trial. According to a New York Times report citing ex-National Security Advisor John Bolton's unpublished manuscript, in August, the president wanted to continue freezing aid to Ukraine until the president got the political investigation he wanted of Biden. The coronavirus continues to spread. Bloomberg's John Tucker has more in this live report.
Yeah, Michael, at least 80 deaths reported, 2,700 cases in China. There's evidence it has an incubation period of as long as 2 weeks. That means patients may be spreading the virus before any symptoms even appear. A clinical trial is underway using anti-HIV drugs to treat cases of the new coronavirus. The U.S. now has 5 cases. Michael.
Thank you very much, Bloomberg's John Tucker. NBA fans remain shocked after the helicopter crash that killed Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter, and 7 others. NTSB investigators are at the scene trying to figure out why the chopper crashed in Calabasas, California. In the NBA, tributes were paid to Bryant during the games. The Knicks beat the Nets 110-97. The Celtics and Wizards lost. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. It is 5:20 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Our guest this morning, Chris Rupke, Chief Financial Economist at MUFG, where the shock for the market, certainly, Chris, this morning and for the last few days has been this spreading and seemingly worsening coronavirus out of China. Do you see any GDP hit implications from this illness spreading out of China?
Well, it's very early yet. I think the worry for the markets is really what is going to happen to China's economy. As you know, it seems like it's many first quarters of many recent years. The market has been very worried about what are the growth prospects in China. So at the moment, I mean, the number of cases are a little more than a handful in the United States. So there's 330 million people here. The disease would have to progress quite a bit more before there'd be any worries for the U.S. economy, certainly.
Well, what do you see for the Chinese economy, particularly given that China is extending Lunar New Year closures for markets potentially, and many people, of course, are under pretty significant travel restrictions in the country. Something like 40 million people in China are under travel restrictions right now.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how long they can continue to maintain that famous 6.0% real GDP or higher. But, you know, any hit there, I think at the moment you still have to believe that this virus, that its progress will slow. And, I mean, there's been many viruses over the years, over the last century, and the doctors have been able to beat back the virus, each and every time. So I think this is a story that will wane. Unfortunately, today for the markets, we have so many other things going on that waking up after the weekend, it's just crazy the amount of news out there. I mean, there's a business climate index in Germany has fallen back, new worries about growth there. In the meantime, fixed income markets in Europe don't care because of the Italian election result, and that's brought down sovereign yields there, especially in Italy, by almost 20 basis points. So yields are falling at the moment all over the world. And the interesting thing to me is that Fed funds futures, play along and go wherever 10-year Treasury yields tell them to. And at the moment now we have about 42% odds of a rate cut to 1.5% by the Federal Reserve at the June meeting.
Are these catalysts that you mentioned the kind of thing that could alter the Fed's outlook for this year?
Well, it certainly did last year, although it took a long time. A lot of people think the Fed is getting dragged around by the bond market, and that maybe it should stand firm in the face of what the bond market's telling them. They tried doing that a year ago at this time, and they didn't cut rates until later in July. But I don't know. I think it's going to take a lot for them to get off the fence here. But I tell you, at the moment for December, Fed funds futures were 9 basis points into discounting a second 25 basis point move by the end of the year. So the odds are well over 100% that they move by December. That would be hard for the Fed to ignore eventually, but we'll see if financial markets stable. Don't forget, the Fed tries to have monetary conditions such that it will support financial conditions. Well, the key financial condition really for the Fed that's unspoken is the stock market. And right now, Dow futures tumbling up 412 points. I'm sure that's very worrisome to them at the moment. We'll see if it holds up over the course of the trading day, let alone the rest of the year, though.
And it's going to be very interesting to see what, if any, reaction we get from the Federal Reserve from their next meeting coming up here on Wednesday. Chris Rupke, Chief Financial Economist at MUFG. Always good having you on with us. Thanks so much for being here on Bloomberg Daybreak this morning, where, as you mentioned, we are seeing a precipitous slide in the U.S. futures contracts. S&P futures are lower by 47 points. That's a drop of 1.4%. Dow futures down close to 400, the loss of 397 right now. That's a drop of 1.4% as well. And NASDAQ futures are lower by 173 points. That's a drop of 1.9%. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street is headed for a drop at the open amid deepening fears about the economic and human impact of the deadly new coronavirus that originated in China. Dow futures down almost 400 points this morning. Oil is also slumping, lower by more than 3%, hitting its lowest level in more than 3 months on fears the deadly coronavirus will hit crude demand. Economists say China's escalating viral outbreak may end up hitting Japan's fragile economy harder than the SARS outbreak of 2003. Because tourism has become a much bigger part of the Japanese economy. The Chinese are the biggest spenders in Japan's tourism industry. A business survey in the U.S. points to continued cooling in the job market. The National Association of Business Economics found that while 18% of firms reported a rise in employment in the fourth quarter, an equal share said employment had fallen. That was the first net reading of 0 in a decade. The survey showed high-skilled positions remain the hardest to staff. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it. Add a boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Mix it. Run.
Mix it. Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Dan?
So my baby boy Ben and me just wanted to share what we do to look after the environment. We put the wet wipes we use in the bin instead of down the loo. Would be pretty nasty if that lot ended up blocking our pipes.
Wet wipes and nappies block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin, where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
Chilly January days in London are tough enough without a broken boiler. Keep your home warm and working this winter with 2 years interest-free credit and your boiler installed by one of our expert engineers. Plus, you'll get a 5-year British Gas warranty. And we can even quote by video call after work or on weekends. Get a quote by the 29th of February, and you can also get £200 off a new boiler, or £400 off for our existing home care customers. Search British Gas Boiler. Conditions apply.
This is the Survivalist Network. I told you it was coming. London is now in the full throes of a zombie outbreak. If you do not have an impregnable vehicle, you can still access a Toyota Hilux Invincible. Pre-contagion, it was £199 per month with 0% APR representative. For the good of future generations, friends at your local Toyota Hilux Centre are maintaining that deal. Heed, hurry, haul. You'll be fine.
0% APR representative on new sales of Hilux Invincible over 42 months. £199 per month. Customer deposit of £10,246 when financed through Access Toyota by 31st March 2020. £12,525 optional final payment. Subject status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
The Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
And it's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Learn why the world's most sophisticated advisory firms and broker-dealers rely on Pershing to help them improve profitability, create efficiency, attract talent, and manage risk at Pershing.com.
And we're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures and European stocks are tumbling as fear over the coronavirus ripples across markets. Government reports show the infection spreading around the globe while the cases in China continue to grow. We get the very latest from Bloomberg's Brian Fowler in Tokyo.
We've got close to 3,000 confirmed cases of people who are sick with the virus and many more who are still under observation. Beijing came out and decided this morning to extend the Lunar New Year holidays by another 3 days to February 2nd to try to clamp down on the spread of the virus. We don't know yet if markets will also stay closed that long.
Japan had the only major market open in Asia today. It saw the Nikkei slide about 2%, and right now U.S. futures, S&P futures are down 1.4%. Europe's Stock 600 is lower by 1.9%. Treasury yields are falling on haven demand. Richard Jones is an FX and rates strategist for Bloomberg.
This has been a move that has been gaining momentum over the past week as the coronavirus story has deepened and we've learned more about it. The yields on the U.S. short end are coming off quite sharply. I think that treasuries will probably still remain the most sought-after haven.
That flight to safety has yields on 10-year treasuries down to 1.62%.
Oil is moving sharply lower on fears the virus will dent demand. Saudi Arabia says it's closely monitoring the situation and checking prices now. NYMEX crude oil is down 3.5% at $52.31 a barrel, while Brent is down 3.4% at $58.61.
The fear about the virus is also growing as evidence points to a 2-week incubation period before patients show symptoms. That raises the possibility of people carrying the illness without knowing it.
The death toll from the outbreak has now climbed to at least 80 as governments around the world look to contain its spread. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live now with the very latest. Good morning, John.
Yeah, and Karen, so far, mainland China accounts for 98% of confirmed infections. More than a dozen countries and territories report the illness within their borders. The U.S. has 5 cases, 2 in Southern California, 1 each in Arizona, Washington State, and Chicago. Symptoms include fever, cough, or chest tightness, and difficulty breathing. The medical journal Lancet says a clinical trial is underway using anti-HIV drugs to treat cases of the virus. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. It's 5:33 on Wall Street. Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Authorities are trying to find the cause of yesterday's helicopter crash that carried Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna, and 7 others. Authorities say conditions were extremely foggy when the NBA legend's helicopter went down northwest of Los Angeles on a hillside in Calabasas, killing everyone aboard. Sheriff Alex Villanueva says that debris is scattered over an area the size of a football field.
It's a logistical nightmare in a sense because the crash site itself is not easily accessible. However, we're now faced with, well-wishers and people mourning.
Los Angeles County Medical Examiner Dr. Jonathan Lucas.
Given the terrain and the condition of the site, we expect that this will probably take at least a couple, if not a few days to complete the recovery.
Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti said Bryant will live forever in the heart of Los Angeles. Bryant was 41. Senate Republicans are facing new pressure to call witnesses in Donald Trump's impeachment trial after a new report that the president told his then National Security Advisor John Bolton in August that he wanted to continue freezing aid to Ukraine until the government there investigated political rival Joe Biden. Meanwhile, President Trump says that Democratic Congressman and impeachment manager Adam Schiff has not paid the price yet for what he has done to our country. On NBC's Meet the Press, Schiff was asked if he took the Twitter comment as a threat.
I think it's intended to be. But look, it is going to be very difficult for some of these senators to stand up to this president. It really is. There's just no question about it.
Meet the Press can be heard Sundays on Bloomberg Radio. During the trial, Schiff cited a report that said Republicans were told, quote, "Your head will be on a pike if you vote against President Trump." The comment sparked an audible reaction from Republican senators, including James Lankford, who spoke on CNN's State of the Union.
I'm offended only because Adam Schiff believes that the only reason that we act the way that we do is because the president's going to put our head on a pike. He's invalidating all of our motives. He's saying you're going to ignore all the facts, and you're only doing this because you're afraid of the president, rather than we'll actually be fair in the process and actually look at the facts.
3 rockets reportedly struck the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad, leaving 1 person injured. An American official said the injury was minor and the individual had since returned to duty. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thank you. We're coming up to 5:36 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
Nathan, it will obviously be very emotional tomorrow night when the Lakers play the Clippers in L.A. Magic Johnson yesterday called Kobe Bryant the greatest Laker of all. He became a Laker as a result of one of the greatest trades in NBA history, acquired draft night from Charlotte for Vlade Divac, the guy who made that trade, Jerry West.
He's bigger than life, and Kobe's legacy, that it will remain forever. His impact will remain forever.
On hearing the news yesterday, West said he felt like he had lost a son. Here's Clippers coach Doc Rivers.
The news is just devastating for Vanessa and his family, and there's just so many people he touched. And, you know, it's looking at my young players and seeing how emotional they are. They didn't even know him, you know, and it just tells you how far his reach was. So, I mean, this is just shocking news for all of us.
The games went on Sunday. The moments of silence lasted 24 seconds to honor Kobe's number 24. In fact, both teams purposely took a 24-second violation before starting to play. At the Garden, Knicks beat the Nets 110-97. Kyrie Irving so distraught, he went home, didn't play the game. Nick Kyrgios, the talented but emotional Australian whose emotions have always seemed to hinder his ability to win big matches. He's playing a big one right now at the Aussie Open, tied 1-set all with Rafael Nadal. Another Aussie, Mark Leishman, shot 65 on the Farmers Insurance Golf at Torrey Pines by one shot over John Rahm. Tiger Woods tied for ninth for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. I'm John Staffshower. Nathan?
And John, as the sports world remembers and mourns Kobe Bryant, Bloomberg Radio spoke with the NBA legend just 5 months ago. Bryant sat down with Bloomberg Business Week hosts Carol Massar and Jason Kelly to talk life after basketball, and now seems like an appropriate time to listen back to that conversation with Carol and Jason speaking to Kobe Bryant just back in August.
You have gone through a transition, obviously. Yeah. I love that you're an author. I was reading somewhere that you kind of knew it was time to go, that you were thinking a lot about storytelling. Yeah. Have you always been a writer?
I have. I've been practicing writing. I started writing my junior year in high school. And when I got to the NBA, there's a lot of downtime in travel and hotels and things of that sort. So I would just write. And a lot of the things that I used to write were just ads. I would write advertisements. I had an ad agency that I founded, and we did a lot of work, won some awards for being a small agency. And then when I retired, it was like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? Well, I don't know. I enjoy writing, and I'll write a film. So I wrote Dear Basketball, and was very fortunate for that to be successful, and then just continued on.
And how is it different from what, how many years you played in the NBA? I mean, what are you learning kind of about yourself in doing this?
Well, how much I enjoy teaching and passing on information to the next generation. It feels much, much better than any championship that can be won, because it's more lasting, right? If I can do something that inspires a kid in some way, or it gets the kid to view something differently in some way, and then he goes through his life, she goes through her life, and then in turn they inspire someone else, you create this domino effect that is far greater than any championship that can be won. And
huge
that's
impact,
fun.
Right?
Huge.
One thing I want to ask you about, and I guess it's kind of near and dear to both of us, but we think about equality in sports, and we've been talking about how tennis seems to have figured it out, but a lot of other sports haven't. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And that's probably I won't say probably, it is our mission to do something about that. I mean, I have 4 girls, and the first 2 are definitely athletes. Mm-hmm. The third one and the fourth one, we'll see, is still too young. But if I had to bet, I'd say they'd be athletes as well. Right. So it's important to fight for that and make sure that when they come of age, that they are ready to get equal pay, right? And fight for what it is that they deserve.
Why has it been such a struggle, do you think?
That's a great question. I do not know. Yeah. It's like there's a lack of investment. I tell you, like in basketball, for example, the WNBA. I said, okay, well, the WNBA is not as popular as the NBA. Okay, well, I can remember the NBA when it first started. And I remember some companies putting a lot of money behind marketing players. Yeah. And through marketing those players, the popularity of the game picked up. You guys are sitting here and saying, okay, you're waiting for the WNBA to become popular. Well, we're waiting on the investment from corporations to start telling the stories of some of these young women that have unbelievable stories, unbelievable inspirational stories to tell, and they're not being told. Why? Right, and so we're going to get there.
That was Kobe Bryant speaking with Bloomberg Business Week hosts Carol Massar and Jason Kelly in an interview from August. Bryant died in a helicopter crash yesterday. He was 41 years old. All told, 9 people died on that helicopter, including Bryant's 13-year-old daughter, Gianna. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
This is your...
Welcome to Nuffield Health Battersea, a gym built around you. You get regular health MOTs to create a plan that works for you, with physios and personal trainers on site. You'll find a wide range of equipment and classes, and our expert team will support you to get the most out of your health, fitness, and your membership. Join today to get the rest of the month free. Search Nuffield Health. Specialists in you. 12-month commitments only. Facilities stated are in most gyms. Visit nuffieldhealth.com/terms.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run. Mix it. Mix it.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
On air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Special report, Kobe Bryant dead. I'm Christopher Cruz. Debris is scattered over an area the size of a football field this morning on a hillside in Calabasas, California, where retired NBA legend Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash yesterday morning. Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva.
The FAA is already on scene, and they've provided very invaluable assistance. They've secured a 5-mile flight restriction for the area of the crash site, and also a 5,000-foot ceiling over it. So that is a great help in securing the crash site.
Los Angeles Laker LeBron James was stunned by the crash.
I'm happy just to be in any conversation with Kobe Bean Bryant, one of the all-time greatest basketball players to ever play, one of the all-time greatest Lakers. The man got 2 jerseys hanging up in Staples Center. It's just crazy.
Bryant's 13-year-old daughter and 7 other people also died in the crash. I'm Christopher Cruz.
Why all the top-tier experts? Because business is not a magic trick.
Give us a sense of the economic backdrop.
Bloomberg Markets.
Which financial records are these?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Deepening fears about the economic and human impact of the deadly coronavirus sending stocks, oil, and China's yuan tumbling today while spurring haven assets. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 50 points. Dow futures down 440. NASDAQ futures down 177. And the Stocks Europe 600 is down more than 2% this morning. The DAX in Germany is down 2.2%. 10-year Treasury up 20-30 seconds, yield 1.61%. The yield on the 2-year 1.43%. NYMEX crude oil is down 3.4% or $1.82 to 52.37 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.8% or $12.40 at 15.90.60 an ounce. The euro 1.1026 against the dollar. The British pound 1.3088 and the yen 108.88. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, the draft of John Bolton's new book has given Democrats new ammunition in their battle to admit new witnesses and documents into the impeachment trial. An excerpt from the ex-National Security Advisor directly contradicts some of the arguments made by President Trump's defense team. The New York Times says Bolton detailed an August conversation with Trump, claiming the president told him personally that he wanted to continue withholding military aid to Ukraine until officials there launched investigations into the Bidens. The coronavirus continues to spread. Bloomberg's John Tucker has more in this live report.
And Michael, at least 80 deaths reported with over 2,700 cases in China. There's evidence the disease has an incubation period of as long as 2 weeks, which means patients may be spreading the virus before any symptoms appear. A clinical trial is underway using anti-HIV drugs to treat cases of the new coronavirus. The U.S. has 5 cases, 2 in Southern California, 1 in Arizona. Washington State and Chicago earlier had confirmed infections. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you very much. The NTSB investigators are trying to figure out why a helicopter crashed that killed NBA legend Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter, and 7 others in Calabasas, California. In the NBA, tributes were paid to Bryant during the games. The Knicks beat the Nets 110-97. The Celtics and Wizards lost. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg.
Okay, Michael, thanks very much. We're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, where it's 5:49 on Wall Street, and Peter Dixon joins us now, global equities economist at Commerce Bank, as we watch stocks in Europe extend their losses now on concerns over the coronavirus in China. Peter, good morning. What is the risk to European markets of this virus potentially spreading even further?
Morning. Well, I mean, I think there are 2 aspects to this. I mean, one is obviously the fear factor, which I think generally stems from the unknown, which is what this virus kind of represents. It's difficult to disentangle that from the other problem, which is the economics of the coronavirus, which clearly is going to leave its imprint upon the Chinese economy. We're seeing it in oil prices, which have dipped very sharply. And clearly, these 2 factors together are driving markets down. The general hope is that so long as the virus can be contained, this will turn out to be just a modest dip in activity. But obviously, we are awaiting further developments with regards to the potential spread of the virus to determine how to react.
So then, is it too soon to say whether this has a longer term impact on markets than the obvious risk off we're seeing in the session today?
Oh, yeah. I mean, clearly it is. I mean, we have been through this before. I mean, back in 2003, the SARS virus, cut a swathe through the Asian markets and did leave its imprint upon markets elsewhere. But it was very quickly reversed. And I think that, you look back at it now, and, in terms of the market impact, it's barely noticeable. That could be the case today, or it could be, something more serious. So we just don't know. And I guess investors are simply taking the view that it doesn't make sense to take any risks and hold on to stocks that, may dip in the future. So why not sell now, take some profit after we've had a very good run over recent months?
Now, we've had concerns about trade overhanging the market up to now. Are those risks alleviated at this point?
Yes, I think so.
I mean, I think we're talking far less about trade risks now than we were, say, a couple of weeks ago or maybe a couple of months ago. Now, the general fundamental position seems to be set fair. The economy is still holding up. Obviously, there are risks surrounding that. The trade issue appears to be off the agenda for now, and Brexit seems to be disappearing over the horizon as an immediate threat. So the fundamentals look decent, but clearly the reaction that we're seeing this morning is all about worries over the coronavirus and its impact upon China and indeed the rest of the world.
Although we have heard from some quarters, not the least of which is the International Monetary Fund, lowering its global growth forecast for this year. What are some of the further risks that you see in the global outlook this year?
Well, I mean, I think they do stem from growth and from the extent to which the U.S. cycle is fairly well extended. We're enjoying the longest cycle on record. I just wonder if the cycle is vulnerable to external shocks, of which this could be one. The coronavirus could be one, and of course the slowdown in Chinese GDP, which will result from it, could spread throughout the rest of the global economy. We end up with a slightly slower global growth environment, as the IMF is suggesting. And here in Europe, at least, we don't have an awful lot of ammunition left to respond to any significant turndown, certainly with regard to monetary. And it's a question of whether the governments are going to step up to the plate with fiscal policy.
Mm-hmm. Peter Dixon, Global Equities Economist at Commerce Bank. Thanks for being with us this morning as we continue to watch the slide in global equities around the world. Karen?
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 5:53 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Law Report. It's brought to you by American Arbitration Association. Business disputes are inevitable. Resolve faster with the American Arbitration Association, the global leader in alternative dispute resolution for over 90 years. More at adr.org. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is putting limits on the way that it will pursue banks and other financial companies accused of abusive practices against consumers. WellCare's former in-house legal chief is going to work for Eli Lilly. Anna Hakim was looking for a new job after Centene bought WellCare. And the Ninth Circuit ruled that U.S. Airways employees who trade shifts are not entitled to overtime pay for shifts that are added by a trade.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need, all on one legal research platform, including guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now another legal story we're watching. Comments from former Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton that surfaced on a podcast. Clinton talked about, quote, somebody currently in the Democratic primary being a favorite of the Russians. That led candidate Tulsi Gabbard, a congresswoman from Hawaii, to sue Clinton for libel, claiming the comments referred to her. For more on Gabbard's case, Bloomberg's David Weston speaks with Chrissy Hull-Eichhoff, a partner at Alston & Bird, who specializes in defamation law.
A defamation lawsuit is simply getting money damages for something that someone said about you that you think lowers your reputation or is disparaging to your character. However, because defamation lawsuits are seeking money damages, and money damages can be interpreted as a form of punishment for speech, any defamation suit is going to run up against the strong principles that have been developed of the First Amendment and the policies and principles of free speech. And that's going to be especially hard for Tulsi Gabbard here because she is a public official and a public figure, and under Supreme Court First Amendment jurisprudence over the years, there has been developed a strong constitutional principle that makes it very hard for public officials and public figures to actually succeed on defamation claims.
Hillary Clinton did not name Tulsi Gabbard. Does that interfere with this action? Does that give Ms. Clinton a defense?
It is one of the elements of defamation that Tulsi Gabbard is going to have to prove that the statements were about her. That's known as of and concerning. They have to be about her. And on the one hand, it is true that Hillary Clinton did not name her by name. But the cases have shown that you don't have to be named by name if a reasonable listener would have understood that she was referring to Tulsi Gabbard. And I think that's a bit of an ambiguity in this case. But the Tulsi Gabbard's lawyers have really laid out in the complaint anticipating this as a problem, and have laid out that not only was it generally interpreted by the press as referring to her, but also the next day a Hillary Clinton spokesperson made somewhat of a coy reference that further seemed to indicate that it was about Tulsi Gabbard. That's going to be a bit of a tricky area for them, but probably not the hardest area for them.
And that's Chrissy Hull-Eichhoff, a partner at Alston & Bird, speaking with Bloomberg's David Weston. Catch more of that interview, plus analysis of the latest legal news, by listening to Bloomberg's Balance of Power, weekdays at noon on Bloomberg Radio and Television. Plus, attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. S&P futures are down 53 points. Dow futures are down 466, and NASDAQ futures down 183. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run. Mix it up. Skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up. Run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Witch Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
World, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Monday, January 27th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
U.S. futures fall as the death toll from the coronavirus climbs.
The infection spread accelerates around the world while cases in China grow.
Beijing extends the Lunar New Year holiday to contain the outbreak.
Bond yields fall, oil tumbles, the yen strengthens, and gold gains.
A report involving former National Security Advisor Bolton turns up the heat in the impeachment trial, plus the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad is hit by multiple rockets. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. Remembrances of Kobe Bryant continue to pour in. A tribute at the Garden last night before the Knicks beat the Nets. Week 2 of the Australian Open underway in Melbourne.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. futures tumbling to start the week. We're coming up to 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 57 points. Dow futures down 505, and NASDAQ futures down 197. The DAX in Germany is down 2.4%. The CAC in Paris down 2.5%, and the FTSE 100 is down about the same. 10-year Treasury up 22.30 seconds, yield 1.60%. Yield on the 2-year 1.42%. NYMEX crude oil is down 3.5% and $1.90 at $52.29 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.8% or $13 $2.20 at $15.9150 an ounce. The euro 1.1027 against the dollar, and the yen is at 108.86. Nathan.
And Karen, spreading fear over the coronavirus is rippling across markets. Government reports show the infection spreading around the globe while the cases in China continue to grow. For the very latest, we bring in Bloomberg Daybreak Asia anchor Brian Curtis in Hong Kong. Brian.
Nathan, Karen, the most shocking revelation so far. Wuhan Mayor Zhou Xianwang said 5 million people left the city before the lockdown on travel. That spooked markets. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang is visiting Wuhan today to assess conditions. Hong Kong has moved to bar all entry of travelers from Hubei province, where Wuhan is based. And the government here raised the response to emergency, shut down Disneyland and Ocean Park, and canceled the marathon. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Brian, thank you. The death toll from the coronavirus has now climbed to at least 80. Most financial markets in Asia are closed for a holiday this week, and now we're learning that holiday will extend into next month. For details, we turn to Bloomberg's Brian Fowler in Tokyo.
Beijing came out and decided this morning to extend the Lunar New Year holidays by another 3 days to February 2nd to try to clamp down on the spread of the virus. We don't know yet if markets will also stay closed that long. We also had some tensions flaring in Hong Kong where protesters set fire to a public housing block that was intended to be used as a quarantine facility. So there's a lot of frustration and fear spreading through the region.
And fear is also growing as evidence points to the virus having a 2-week incubation period before patients show symptoms. That raises the possibility of people carrying the virus without knowing it.
China is working hard to contain the outbreak, but that is proving tough for local officials. We get more from Bloomberg's Derek Wallbank in Singapore.
We're seeing some extraordinary things in terms of trying to build up hospitals to address the issue and have them operational from dirt to a hospital in 2 weeks' time. I mean, that sort of aggressive response there, but it's not clear that it's inspiring all of the confidence in the world. One press conference in China today was particularly not helpful, I guess I would say, compounded with errors about face mask production. 2 of the 3 people on stage wearing a face mask incorrectly. So it's not all going brilliantly over here. And I think that it's still a situation where China, where 98% of the cases happen to be, trying to figure out how to stem this.
Over the next few days, China is sending more than 1,600 people to the center of the outbreak to help contain its spread.
Financial markets are reacting violently to the virus. U.S. futures are down 1.6%, while Europe's stock 600 is lower by 2.1%. Bond yields are falling on haven demand. Richard Jones is an FX and rates strategist for Bloomberg.
The yields on the U.S. short end are coming off quite sharply. This has been a move that has been gaining momentum over the past week as the coronavirus story has deepened and we've learned more about it. And so we've seen that substantial move last week actually extend, and I expect it'll probably continue extending throughout the day.
And right now, the yield on 10-year treasuries is down to 1.60%.
Oil is moving sharply lower on fears the virus will hit demand. Saudi Arabia says it's closely monitoring the situation. Carlos Slim is an economist at Standard Chartered in Dubai.
Markets are essentially comparing the new coronavirus with the 2003 SARS epidemic. But back then in 2003, we didn't actually see a year-on-year demand drop. What we saw was a deceleration in demand growth. So that's why we're seeing this excessive pessimism in oil markets today, with Brent prices dropping below $65 over the course of last week.
Now they're dropping again this week, now below $60 a barrel. Right now, Brent's at $58.60, while West Texas Intermediate is at $52.29, both down.